Warrior Lore. Chapter 465. That brat is very strange. Within the Tianhu Empire's formation, Jingyue, Minghu and the others were also shocked. Behind Jingyue and Minghu, an old man wearing a black robe and a wide hat raised his head slightly. His eyes were overflowing with brilliance as he looked at the golden light erupting from the sky below. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, the symbol array that Du Xiaofu had set up in the air above the plaza finally began to distort. A terrifying wave of energy spread out from within the symbol array. Then, under many shocked gazes, the huge illusion array finally began to explode, rumble. Violent energy swept out, causing the entire plaza to tremble violently. Symbols bloomed in the sky, and the energy spread out to make people tremble. The symbol array was directly destroyed. Lu Kuan's figure appeared in the sky once again. Black veins bulged on his ferocious and pale face. His eyes were filled with a deep and strange color of blood scars. A faint light covered his entire body, and mysterious symbols crisscrossed on the surface of his body like black blood scars. He looked like an evil ghost, but his aura made people's hearts tremble for no reason, and they wanted to prostrate themselves before him. Lu Kuan's gaze also fell on the golden light that had erupted below. His strange eyes were filled with doubt. The domineering and sharp aura that spread out from the golden light was frightening, causing his heart to faintly tremble. Rumble. Within the golden light, a faint rumbling sound could be heard. A terrifying pressure swept out, and it was extremely shocking. Whoosh. Within the golden light, dazzling golden symbols and mysterious symbols soared into the sky. These golden symbols and mysterious symbols were divided into two groups. A group of densely packed golden symbols and mysterious symbols rushed out. Then, above the golden light, they directly lined up and condensed into the shadow of a golden-winged rock. At this moment, the domineering and terrifying aura reached its peak. The golden-winged rock shadow seemed to have been injected with life, and it wanted to spread its wings and soar into the sky, suppressing all the experts in the world. Boom! The other golden talisman markings condensed into an illusory mountain peak that extended out as if it had been bestowed with life. Its aura was overbearing to the point of shaking one's soul, and it emitted a dazzling golden glow. Its boundless pressure and aura overflowed into the sky, causing the earth to rumble and the distant mountains to tremble endlessly. The golden halo began to disappear. Within the deep pit, one could see Du Xiaofu sitting cross-legged. The flesh and blood on his chest were scattered, and his bones had long since recovered. On the surface of Du Xiaofu's body, golden talisman patterns spread out. Behind him, the shadow of a mountain peak and the shadow of a golden-winged rock floated at the same time. Under the two terrifying pressures, the heavens and earth trembled and the earth began to rumble. What a powerful pressure! A frightening might spread across the surrounding square, causing everyone to feel suffocated as they looked at it. Their bodies involuntarily trembled, while the vain spirit and soul within their bodies trembled in fear. What's going on? Could that be a golden-winged rock? The golden-winged rock and that strange illusory mountain peak. Could they both be Du Xiaofu's vain spirits? Why are there two vain spirits? This is too strange. The pressure is too frightening. On the city tower, many old men who were sitting upright immediately stood up in shock. Under the spreading of the terrifying pressure, even those who were at the peak of the martial marquis realm could not withstand it. Even martial kings were affected. Are there two vain spirits? Unbelievable. The illusory mountain peak's vain spirit, could it be? The North vanquishing prince's eyes trembled in shock. He was also puzzled by this scene. He seemed to have vaguely thought of some legends, but he was not sure and did not dare to think too much about it. The shadow of the golden-winged rock was evolving behind Du Xiaofu's back. The illusory mountain peak was growing and condensing, communicating with the energy of the heavens and earth. Boom! A frightening aura spread out like an earthquake. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Even the sky trembled as a frightening aura rose violently from Du Xiaofu's body. The valiant Marquis Du Xiaofu is breaking through. He is breaking through. The aura is about to reach the martial marquis realm. The valiant Marquis du Xiaofu is breaking through to the martial Marquis realm. On the city tower, some old men exclaimed in shock. At this moment, the frightening aura on Du Xiaofu's body rose, causing their hearts to tremble. What a strange kid. Lu Kuan's eyes trembled. The faint pupils on his ferocious face were suffused with a sinister light. His heart sank as a frightening evil aura surged out from his body. The wind blew, and the clouds surged. The frightening pressure that filled the sky caused people's bodies to stiffen and their souls to become sluggish. No matter how strange you are, it's useless in front of me, the human king. A sinister shout came from Lu Kuan's mouth. He formed a seal with his hand and faint black, profound energy rapidly surged out from his body. In the end, it seemed to have transformed into dark clouds that covered the sky. The dark clouds covered the sky, and even the sunlight could not shine in, causing the world to become dark. Only the golden-winged rock and the mountain around Du Xiaofu were shining with a golden light. The surging evil aura lingered, and in the end, even Lu Kuan's figure disappeared without a trace. In an instant, the entire space, which was covered by dark clouds and glittering golden light, became quiet. This aura made people's hair stand on end for no reason and made them feel uneasy. Even the few martial kings present had their faces changed. Without a doubt, when Lu Kuan saw the change in the valiant Marquis du Xiaofu, he was going to use his full strength. Die! It's time to end this. In the quiet and palpitating plaza, a sinister shout resounded from the rolling dark clouds. The frightening evil aura seemed to cause the entire space to tremble. Chi 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 chi. Accompanied by the terrifying pressure, a giant black serpent image swept out and instantly dived towards Du Xiaofu, who was in the deep pit on the ground. At this moment, the golden-winged rock behind Du Xiaofu seemed to be alive as it directly soared into the sky. Its aura was overbearing and sharp. Golden light blossomed in the sky as it flapped its wings and swept towards the giant black serpent image. Gee! The golden-winged rock collided with the giant black serpent. Rune light shot out and bloomed like fireworks as energy swept across the sky. Rumble! At this moment, the enormous black serpent illusionary figure, which possessed a frightening might, was easily suppressed and destroyed by the golden-winged rock illusionary figure. Ripples of energy symbols that appeared to have materialized suddenly spread out in all directions. Numerous low and deep muffled sounds resounded in the sky, causing the hearts of the countless onlookers below to tremble. Chi 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 chi. The evil aura that blotted out the sky was also dispersed by the golden-winged rock. Lu Kuan's figure was revealed, and at this moment, his body was also shaken to the point of staggering back. Break! In the deep pit on the ground of the plaza, Du Xiaofu, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his mouth and shouted. A muffled sound suddenly came from the divine watchtower, and at the same time, a new powerful aura swept out from his body. The aura soared and swept through the sky. At this moment, the illusory mountain behind Du Xiaofu spiraled, absorbing the endless energy of heaven and earth. It released a dazzling golden light that shone brightly, and an endless pressure overflowed into the heavens. Rumble. At this moment, the ground of the plaza rumbled. The illusory mountain was connected to the surrounding earth for no reason. The talisman runes flickered, as if it was about to merge with the earth. Initial breakthrough to the martial Marquis realm. The divine valor Marquis du Xiaofu has broken through consecutively. He has stepped into the martial Marquis realm from the other side of the meridian spirit realm. Countless gazes were filled with shock and astonishment. In a short period of time, under the gazes of countless people, the divine valor Marquis du Xiaofu had actually broken through 2 levels and stepped into the martial Marquis realm. If it were anyone else, no matter how talented they were, they would need at least a few years. This scene was even more shocking to the people of the Du family. Even Du Chong, who had broken through from the other side of the meridian spirit realm to the martial Marquis realm, took 3 years under the nurturing of countless resources from the Du family. And now, Du Xiaofu had actually broken through so easily in such a short period of time, under the gazes of everyone present. Is this really the initial stage of the martial Marquis realm? With this aura, Du Chang's previous perfect martial marquee realm was probably only at this level. Amidst the countless shocked gazes, it was not difficult for some people to feel that the aura of the divine valor Marquis Du Xiaofu was not the slightest bit inferior to that of the Du family's genius Du Chang. What a powerful aura, so domineering and fierce. What kind of cultivation method is this? It's so terrifying. On the city gate tower, countless gazes were filled with shock. They could feel the aura of Du Xiaofu that had just broken through, especially the domineering and fierce aura, which made people tremble in fear. Even the meridian spirit was affected by it. At this moment, a hint of fear finally appeared in Lu Kuan's eyes. His ferocious face was gloomy as he waved his hand. The evil aura once again surged in the air, and a terrifying aura spread out. The strange talisman runes around his body soared into the sky, communicating with the meridian spirit. In the end, they condensed into a huge, dark nether demon snake that seemed to have materialized. Die! Lu Kuan's ferocious body merged into the shadow of the dark nether demon snake and directly swept towards Du Xiaofu. On the square, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly opened. At this moment, golden light burst out from his eyes like golden lightning. His figure flew out, wrapped in talisman runes, and directly merged into the shadow of the mountain that was floating at a low altitude. Have you had enough fun? Now it's my turn. When the loud shout came out, Du Xiaofu and the shadow of the mountain were connected as one, as if they were real. An endless domineering aura swept out. Chapter 466. The Golden Mountain and the giant black snake collided, their auras exploding. The giant black snake wanted to coil around the Golden Mountain, and the Golden Mountain wanted to suppress the giant black snake. The two continued to collide. Black clouds and golden light illuminated the sky, causing muffled sounds to ring out repeatedly in the air. This caused the ears of countless people below to feel a piercing pain. Some blood even seeped out from the ears of those who were a little weaker. The energy spread in this kind of collision was too shocking. Countless people in and out of the square were watching. The valiant Marquis Du Xiaofu, who had just broken through to the martial marquis, was fighting with the martial king genius Lu Kuan. He was not at a disadvantage. Lu Kuan's bloodline soul is the dark demon snake. It's ranked very close to the top of the heavenly beast list. Its aura is terrifying, as expected of a human king. Is that mountain phantom Du Xiaofu's bloodline soul? It's not a monster. How strange. Swish! Lv Kuan's black nether demonic snake vein spirit finally wrapped itself around the Golden Mountain's shadow. It expanded infinitely and tightly wrapped itself around the Golden Mountain. Suppress. Du Xiaofu's shout came from the solid mountain phantom. The golden talisman engravings on the Golden Mountain phantom spread out. At this moment, it directly suppressed the head of the dark demon snake, as if it wanted to suppress all living things. Its aura was terrifying. Walala! The mountain phantom's aura was obviously stronger than the dark demon snake's. However, the dark demon snake's aura was stronger than the mountain phantom's in terms of cultivation level. The two suppressed each other. Dazzling runes exploded and spread. The energy soared into the sky, as if it wanted to overturn this part of the sky. However, no one could do anything to the other. Brat, I was wrong about you. It seems that you've obtained all the benefits in the Savage Beast Mountain range, and you've also obtained other benefits. But it's useless now. I have the immortal martial vein. You're useless after all. Lu Kuan's figure was faintly visible inside the dark demon snake. Suddenly, countless faint talisman engravings burst out. These faint talisman engravings appeared on the surface of the dark demon snake and then covered the mountain phantom. Boom! All of a sudden, the dark nether demonic snake seemed to have been injected with some kind of cardiac stimulant. Its power skyrocketed. A flow of evil and terrifying aura burst out, freezing blood and corroding souls. Not good. This guy's understanding of the pulse spirit has not reached the level where he can resist the immortal martial vein. This is troublesome. As the mysterious runes on the dark nether demonic snake's body surged out, on Du Xiaoqing's shoulder, Du Xiaoyao's pale golden eyes flashed with a dignified look. Du Xiaoyao was undoubtedly the person who knew Du Xiaofu's pulse soul the best. Chi la la, under the influence of Lu Kuan's immortal martial vein, The illusory mountain peak was finally unable to resist. It began to crack and then shattered. Ka. In a short period of time, the mountain phantom turned into dazzling rune fragments and shattered the sky. Du Xiaofu's body was revealed. Blood dripped from the corners of his mouth and his face was pale. Chi-la-la. At this moment, the illusory dark nether demonic snake that seemed to have materialized wrapped around Du Xiaofu's body like a lightning bolt. It tightly wrapped around Du Xiaofu's body like a giant python. The power of the immortal martial vein burst out. The mysterious runes corroded everything. The terrifying power was exerted on Du Xiaofu's body. Not good. Countless people inside and outside the square were worried again. That Lu Kuan was too strong. Under the immortal martial vein, after the Valor Marquis broke through to the martial Marquis realm, he was already able to resist the cultivation strength of a martial king and the dark nether demonic snake's pulse soul. However, Lu Kuan, coupled with the power of the immortal martial vein and the talent of a human king, was suppressed again. At this moment, many people on the city tower were also watching intently. Enveloped by the dark nether demonic snake's pulse soul and the immortal martial vein, Du Xiaofu felt as if he was about to be suppressed and destroyed. At the same time, inside Du Xiaofu's body, a domineering and fierce aura suddenly surged out from the broken bone in his chest. It was like a king among beasts, not to be provoked. Boom! However, at this moment, the familiar mysterious light in Du Xiaofu's body suddenly jumped out from its slumber. It seemed to be affected by the immortal martial vein. A terrifying aura burst out and even covered the broken bone in his chest. The domineering and fierce aura surged. Chilala. At the same time, a mysterious light began to bloom from Du Xiaofu's body. It was tightly connected to his meridians and blood vessels. It crisscrossed and condensed into a net of light that directly covered Du Xiaofu. In the end, it even covered the body of the dark nether demonic snake with lightning speed. Boom! An ancient and oppressive aura spread out from the net of light, causing the people around the square to tremble in an instant. Their bodies couldn't help but crawl as if they were facing a king that couldn't be resisted. It's finally out. Seeing this scene, Du Xiaoyao's pale golden spirit eyes revealed a smile. He was very clear about the terror of the martial vein spiritual seal. What's going on? Why is the pressure so strong? Could that be martial vein spiritual seal? Could that be the legendary martial vein spiritual seal? At this moment, the gazes of many people on the city tower changed abruptly when they saw Du Xiaofu, who was wrapped by the mysterious light net. At this moment, no one noticed that within the Du family's lineup, the eyes of all the Du family members were trembling violently. Looking at the mysterious net of light covering Du Xiaofu's body, all the members of the Du family bloodline felt their blood boiling and their martial vein surging. A terrifying pressure was acting on the depths of their blood and soul, which they couldn't resist at all. The faces of the Du family members with lower strength had already turned red. On the surface of their bodies, there were faint mysterious talisman patterns surging. These mysterious talisman patterns were very similar to the mysterious net of light on Du Xiaofu's body, but in terms of pressure and form, they were very different. Sizzle. Wrapped in the mysterious net of light, the vein soul of the dark hell demonic snake showed a ferocious look in its scarlet eyes. It wanted to break free from the mysterious net of light, but no matter how hard it struggled, it couldn't break free. The mysterious net of light covering the dark hell demonic snake seemed to be affected by the power of the immortal martial vein that accompanied the dark hell demonic snake. It was like a lion being provoked by a wild wolf and was enraged. That kind of authority couldn't be challenged. The mysterious net of light shrouded tighter and tighter, and a terrifying power spread out. Lines of talisman light were like steel wires, directly destroying the dark hell demonic snake's body. Sizzle. The talisman light shot out, and the dark hell demonic snake's shadow was directly destroyed. Puff! Lu Kuan's hideous and ghost-like body was immediately revealed. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his blood-stained eyes were full of shock. Impossible. How could this be? How could this be? Lu Kuan was shocked. Looking at Du Xiaofu, who was wrapped in the mysterious net of light, Lu Kuan's terrifying aura made the immortal martial vein in his body feel fear. This shocked him, and he couldn't believe it. How could his immortal martial vein be afraid of this guy? He was the human king. No, you still can't do anything to me. I have the immortal martial vein. I am the human king. You can't do anything to me. Lu Kuan kept shaking his head, trying to suppress the fear in his heart. He was the human king, and he had the immortal martial vein. How could he be afraid of a little brat from the Stone Dragon Empire? This was absolutely impossible. The human king's aura of the immortal martial vein kept surging out, directly confronting the terrifying aura on Du Xiaofu's body. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's eyes were flashing with silver lightning. His body was covered with the mysterious net of light. It seemed that under the influence and stimulation of Lu Kuan's immortal martial vein, his supreme authority was being challenged. The mysterious net of light on the surface of his body was getting brighter and brighter, as if it was being given life. Something was starting to speed up, and there was a will that wanted to awaken. Boom! In the sky, in the tense atmosphere, a low, muffled sound of thunder suddenly resounded. Countless gazes looked up and saw that a dark cloud had suddenly appeared in the sky. The dark cloud covered the sky, and the faint sound of thunder could be heard as silver lightning flashed. Seeing the strange phenomenon in the sky, there was an uproar all around the square and on the city tower. Then, everyone's eyes fell on Du Xiaofu. Everyone could see that the rolling thunder and dark cloud was moving towards Du Xiaofu at a low altitude. Without a doubt, the thunder and dark cloud was attracted by Du Xiaofu. At this moment, the thunder and dark cloud also attracted the attention of the Tianhu Empire's Jingyue and Minghu. The North vanquishing prince narrowed his eyes and stared at the thunder and dark cloud in the sky in confusion. At this moment, Du Xiaofu felt an indescribable pain in his heart. It was as if something wanted to break out of his body, but it couldn't completely appear. That feeling was really uncomfortable in his heart. However, the aura on the mysterious net of light in his body was getting stronger and stronger. A domineering and destructive aura was awakening and surging. Rumble. In the sky, the dark clouds rolled and gathered into a thunder cloud. Silver lightning flashed continuously, and a powerful thunder pressure filled the air, causing everyone to feel a chill on their skin. Du Xiaofu finally couldn't hold back the energy that was about to erupt from his body. He stood with his head held high and shouted at the rolling thunder cloud behind him. His voice was like thunder. Rumble. At this moment, the mysterious net of light on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body shone brightly like a thunderball. Countless dazzling lights were released at this moment, as if thunder had suddenly been released, raging in the sky. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, a series of muffled sounds came from the Du family's formation on the city tower. Starting from the weakest cultivators, there were people who respectfully prostrated themselves on one knee. Facing Du Xiaofu, who was crisscrossing thunder and lightning in the sky, the pressure acting on their martial veins, blood vessels, and souls was irresistible. Mysterious runes flashed on the surface of their bodies, and if they didn't, their bodies would explode and they would die. Chapter 467. Translator. H2-H2 Mr. On the city gate tower, the sight of the Du family experts prostrating themselves on the ground shocked everyone. At this moment, some of the experts present thought of something. It was rumored that Du Xiaofu was related to the Du household. At this moment, Du Xiaofu also had the aura of lightning on his body. From the looks of it, Du Xiaofu must have awakened a martial vein or bloodline related to the lightning of the Du family. Moreover, it was of an extremely high level, which was why the Du family experts could not help but prostrate themselves, like a pack of wolves greeting their king. In the air, the thunderclouds were still surging, as if they were still containing something. As the thunderclouds surged, silver snakes shuttled back and forth. However, the entire square fell into an envious silence. All the spectators held their breaths and waited. They stared intently at the surging thunderclouds. The destructive pressure that spread from them was clearly even more frightening than the undying martial vein sovereign king's pressure from Lu Kuan's body. Within the thunderclouds, there was a domineering destructive pressure that seemed to be able to destroy everything, including all life in the world. Cuckoo, the thunderclouds occupying the horizon were now connected to Du Xiaofu. The mysterious runes on Du Xiaofu's body were also connected to the lightning. It was a daunting sight. Everyone looked at the scene in the sky and swallowed. At this moment, even Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, the North vanquishing prince, the protector king, the general, Gu Xinyan, Gu Hua, and the others could not help but clench their fists tightly, their hearts beating faster. Everyone could feel that Du Xiaofu's body was undergoing a shocking change, as if something was awakening. This kind of awakening was far more terrifying than Lu Kuan's undying martial vein. The increasingly terrifying lightning pressure caused Lu Kuan's ferocious face to twitch once again. He felt uneasy in his heart. At this moment, the lightning might that filled the sky was filled with destruction, causing him to feel increasingly fearful. Crackle. Under everyone's nervous gazes, the rolling lightning in the sky suddenly trembled violently. Thunderclouds churned, and lightning instantly pierced through space like divine radiance. Then, all of them connected with Du Xiaofu. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the terrifying lightning was directly swallowed by Du Xiaofu into his body. This caused the mysterious net of light on Du Xiaofu's body to become even more resplendent. Streaks of light wreaked havoc for hundreds of feet, all like lightning. His entire body was like a ball of lightning blooming around him, and a terrifying aura lingered in the sky. What a powerful pressure! My blood is boiling. I can't resist it anymore. My martial vein feels like it's about to explode. I can't fight back. At this moment, within the Du family's lineup, the Du family's elders also began to prostrate themselves on the ground. Even the outstanding talent, Du Chong, was no exception. Although Du Yi's eyes were filled with unwillingness, he could only prostrate himself on the city tower under the irresistible pressure. Facing Du Xiaofu in the sky, it was as if he was facing his king. He couldn't resist. His eyes were filled with hatred, but he didn't dare to resist. Within the Du family's lineup, only the North vanquishing prince was able to resist. His body was covered in multicolored light, and his eyes flickered with lightning. He had already stood up in shock. The Valor Marquis is awakening a monstrous martial vein. That must be a monstrous martial vein. It's even stronger than Lu Kuan's. On the city tower, the experts from the various major forces, nobles, and ministers all stood up in excitement. At this moment, the Valor Marquis Du Xiaofu was awakening a terrifying martial vein. How could they not be excited when all of this was happening right before their eyes? The Valor Marquis. At this moment, the silent square was once again in an uproar. Inside and outside the square, countless gazes were fixed on the purple-robed figure wrapped in lightning. Their faces were flushed with excitement, and their eyes were blazing. Frenzied shouts resounded throughout the imperial capital. Only Lu Kuan looked at Du Xiaofu in the sky. His ferocious face was covered in blood, and his terrifying gaze began to turn gloomy. He clenched his fists tightly. He didn't expect that his ability to intimidate the entire Stone Dragon Empire would be completely shattered by that meddling brat in the Savage Beast Mountain range. At this moment, that brat's aura was even stronger than his. His pressure enveloped the human King Tianzi, and his limelight was about to overshadow him. How could he not be furious? Coldness, resentment, fear, and other complicated emotions intertwined in Lu Kuan's eyes before turning into dense killing intent. Chi! Lu Kuan's figure flashed as he waved his hand. In the end, he exerted all his strength. A cold aura that seemed to have materialized spread out from his body like rolling dark clouds. As the dark clouds moved, they turned into a huge black handprint and suddenly slapped towards Du Xiaofu. Chi-la-la, the huge black handprint seemed to have passed through space and slapped towards Du Xiaofu with lightning speed. The terrifying pressure and power that permeated the air was enough to destroy everything under Lu Kuan's final desperate attack. In the sky, all the lightning wrapped in the ball of lightning strangely withdrew into Du Xiaofu's body at this moment. The purple-robed figure appeared in the sky. Under countless nervous gazes, Du Xiaofu's eyes were overflowing with a lightning glow at this moment. However, a faint smile was lifted on his face. As he waved his hand and pointed at Lu Kuan, An extremely intense energy fluctuation was suddenly emitted from high up in the sky. This kind of energy fluctuation caused the hair of the countless onlookers below to suddenly stand on end. Chi-la-la, a finger imprint shot out from Du Xiaofu's finger. The finger imprint turned into a chilling bolt of lightning, like a lightning dragon shooting out. Countless people looked at the thunderbolt fingerprint as their scalps suddenly exploded. At this moment, under the domineering and destructive aura, everyone felt as if their souls were about to explode. They were so stunned that they could not speak, and even their breathing began to become difficult. In a short instant, the thunderbolt fingerprint ruthlessly collided with Lu Kuan's jet-black handprint. Chi-la-la. When the two collided, there was not much of an explosion. Only a low and deep muffled sound spread out. This kind of energy spread out, causing the surrounding space to distort, causing the entire place to tremble. Walala! In just a short instant, the surrounding energy suddenly exploded like fireworks within the distorted space. The muffled sound of energy resounded endlessly. At this moment, one could feel the berserk energy fluctuation in the sky above the capital. Pucci, Lu Kuan's black handprint was easily destroyed. He was unable to resist at all. Blood continuously spurted out from his mouth, but the thunderbolt fingerprint still existed. It could not be destroyed. It pierced through space like lightning and shot into Lu Kuan's shoulder, piercing a bloody hole in his shoulder. Hula! Blood mist spurted out from Lu Kuan's shoulder. Silver snakes flickered, and the domineering aura of destruction could no longer be recovered. The current Yu is too weak to withstand a single blow. Du Xiaofu's figure swept down, and a claw in his hand directly grabbed at Lu Kuan. Stop! At this moment, within the Tianhu Empire's lineup, behind Jingyue and Minghu, an old man wearing a wide hat suddenly shouted. Then, his figure moved, turning into a blur as he shot towards Du Xiaofu. At the same time, a palm directly slammed towards Du Xiaofu. Not good. There's a hidden expert within the Tianhu Empire. At this moment, the expressions of the Kingdom Protector King and the North Vanquishing King changed drastically. Looking at the aura of that person, it was actually much stronger than Jingyue and Minghu. Get lost. At the same time, a clear and ethereal voice suddenly rang out. A graceful green figure seemed to be able to affect time, and instantly appeared in midair, blocking in front of the old man with the wide hat. Her fair and slender palm stretched out, and a green glow erupted. Her fist directly collided with the old man's palm. Bang! Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The fist and the palm collided fiercely, and a muffled sound of energy suddenly rang out. At the same time, the old man in the wide hat seemed to have sensed something, and his face under the wide hat suddenly changed. Ding ding! In the sky, the two figures separated as soon as they came into contact. The old man with the wide hat was directly blown away, and it took him a few steps to stabilize his body. At this moment, the beautiful figure in green swayed slightly before she stood proudly in the sky, clearly appearing in front of everyone's eyes. It's actually her. When everyone saw the beautiful figure, they were all stunned. They looked at each other and sucked in a breath of cold air. The beautiful woman who attacked had a graceful figure and a pure and innocent face. If it wasn't Du Xiaoqing, who else could it be? Swish! At the same time, the claw in Du Xiaofu's hand was accompanied by a faint lightning. It directly grabbed Lu Kuan's shoulder and easily restrained his withered body. Swoosh swoosh! On the city tower, 4 figures flew out at the same time. It was Jingyue, Minghu, and the North Vanquishing King. The 4 of them flashed, and suddenly stood behind the old man with the wide hat and Du Xiaoqing. Kid, let go of Lu Kuan. You've won. The old man with the wide hat raised his head, and the wide hat on his head was removed, revealing a complete face. He looked to be in his 60s, and his body was well built. Within his eyes, there was a scarlet glow. Looking at the old man with scarlet eyes, the North Vanquishing King and the Protector King's faces were grave. They didn't recognize the old man, and he didn't seem to be an expert from the Tianhu Empire. However, the aura on his body was extremely terrifying. Du Xiaofu looked at the old man with scarlet eyes and coldly laughed. The battle between the younger generation of the two empires has already ended. This is a battle of life and death. Life and death is up to fate, and no one can interfere. Chapter 468. Brat, Lu Kuan was right. As long as one of you can defeat him, it means the Stone Dragon Empire has won. The Tianhu Empire will compensate you with 10 prefectures. Release the person in your hands. Otherwise, the Sky Snake sect will never let you or the Stone Dragon Empire go. Think carefully. The old man wearing the wide hat was only Du Xiaofu. His eyes were cold and filled with fear. Such a terrifying youth, who was a few years younger than Lu Kuan, had clearly awakened a terrifying martial vein. It seemed to be even stronger than Lu Kuan's immortal martial vein. This brat had just broken through to the martial marquis realm. Although he had defeated Lu Kuan, who was a martial king, who had been severely injured, this proved that this brat's talent was even stronger than Lu Kuan's. Such terrifying talent was already comparable to the strongest of the Manchu's younger generation. If he was allowed to grow, this brat would probably hold a grudge against the Tianhu Empire, or even the Sky Snake sect. He would probably become a great threat to the Sky Snake sect in the future. The Sky Snake sect. This person is an expert from the Sky Snake sect. As the old man's voice fell, the North Vanquishing Prince, the Protector King, and the experts from the various king palaces all paled. The Sky Snake sect was a colossus that stood above the entire central province. If the Stone Dragon Empire were to be compared to the Sky Snake sect, it would be like comparing a goat to a tiger. There was no way they could compete. The Sky Snake sect. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered with lightning. He knew how big the Sky Snake sect was. If he killed Lu Kuan now, the Sky Snake sect would not let the Stone Dragon Empire go. They would not let him go either. However, if he let Lu Kuan go so easily, they would definitely harm him in the future. After thinking for a moment, Du Xiaofu looked at the Sky Snake sect elder and said, "Now, who will win the battle between the younger generation of the Stone Dragon Empire and the Tianhu Empire?" Jingyue's eyes twitched fiercely as she looked at Lu Kuan and the Sky Snake sect elder captured by Du Xiaofu. She said, "Of course the Stone Dragon Empire wins. According to the agreement, the Tianhu Empire will give the Stone Dragon Empire 10 prefectures." Boom! As Jingyue's voice fell, the entire square below erupted into cheers. "Since that's the case, I'll leave Lu Kuan's life in your hands." Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and grabbed Lu Kuan's shoulder with great force, throwing him down to the square below. Poochie! Lu Kuan spat out another mouthful of blood. Then, his body fell down, smashing heavily into the square below. Boom! The ground trembled and the mountains swayed. Lu Kuan's body forcefully rushed into the pile of rubble. His withered body was powerless to struggle, and from within the rubble came a miserable howl filled with resentment. Good kid. The Sky Snake sect will remember you." The old man from the Sky Snake sect gloomily stared at Du Xiaofu. His face was gloomy and his eyes were bloodshot. Then, he swooped down and waved his sleeve. Lu Kuan, who was lying on the ground in a miserable state, was swept up. At this moment, Lu Kuan's aura was weak and the strange evil aura on his body had disappeared. However, his face was pale and his body was covered in blood, especially the bloody hole on his shoulder. It was a destructive injury that was difficult to heal. "Let's go." The Sky Snake sect elder turned his head slightly and glanced at Du Xiaofu. Then, carrying Lu Kuan, his figure flashed and he immediately flew into the sky. Jingyue and Minghu's faces were also extremely ugly. Following the Sky Snake sect elder's departure, figures from the Tianhu Empire's formation on the city gate tower also flew away. The general raised his head and looked at Lu Kuan, who was being carried away by the Sky Snake sect elder. He murmured, "If you don't seek death, you won't die." Chi. Du Xiaofu's figure landed on the square. He once again carried the heavenly purple gold fault that was stuck in the crack on the ground. Then, for some reason, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of pale golden blood. The last of the lightning aura on his body also disappeared. Both inside and outside the square, gazes were burning hot as they looked at the purple-robed young man on the messy ground. The degree of burning hot had reached the point of fanaticism. Under everyone's gaze, today's kingdom war was supposed to be the Tianhu Empire's victory. However, because of the valor divine Marquis Du Xiaofu, the situation was turned around and forcefully reversed. Today, the valor divine Marquis Du Xiaofu had created absolute miracles time and time again with his ferocious and domineering manner. He had heavily injured Lu Kuan and shocked everyone present. During the battle, he had continuously made breakthroughs. In the end, he had completely defeated Lu Kuan, who was at the Martial King realm, with his initial martial Marquis cultivation base. This had shocked the entire Dragon City imperial capital. Everyone knew that after today, Du Xiaofu's name would resound throughout the Stone Dragon Empire and the entire central continent. At this moment, everyone was standing on the city gate tower. Their gazes were still filled with shock as they looked at the purple-robed young man. At this moment, the first Princess Zheng Shengnan and the first Miss of the Xie Mansion, Xie Fei, were also looking at the purple-robed young man who was in the center of the cheering crowd. In the depths of their beautiful eyes, there were ripples of shock. It seemed as if they were truly in love. Of course, at this moment, no one could deny that the purple-robed young man in the square was enough to move the hearts of any woman in the empire. Roar, suddenly, at the center of the imperial capital, in the depths of the imperial palace, a dragon's roar resounded through the sky. The shadow of a golden dragon soared into the sky and hovered above the imperial palace. It released a dazzling golden light and a wave of pressure that caused people's hearts to tremble. Du Xiaofu of the Stone Dragon Empire, King of Heaven's physique, unparalleled valor, valor divine Marquis. A sound wave came from the mouth of the golden dragon shadow. The sound wave was like thunder, rumbling through the imperial capital. The Emperor's dragon conferment, Valor Divine Marquis Du Xiaofu, has been conferred the Valor Divine Marquis. Before becoming a Marquis, he was conferred the title of Marquis. Before becoming a king, he was conferred the title of king. Valor Divine Marquis Du Xiaofu, Valor Divine Marquis Du Xiaofu, Valor Divine Marquis Du Xiaofu. The entire square was in an uproar. Cheers and shouts soared into the sky and resounded through the clouds. They lingered in the sky above the imperial capital for a long time. On the city gate tower, the experts from the various marquis palaces, as well as the many nobles and ministers, raised their arms and cheered. Only the people from the Du Marquis Palace looked at each other with complicated and awkward expressions on their faces. On the city gate tower, Dark Wolf, Phantom, and the rest looked at the purple-robed young man who followed them and looked at each other. At this moment, everyone was thinking of the same thing. This time, they had followed the right person. At this moment, even if they were to be chased away from the Valor Divine Marquis' residence, they would definitely not leave. This time, we have profited big time. On the North Vanquishing Prince's skinny and dark face, there was a smile in his eyes. He knew that this time, it was worth it for his grandfather to take advantage of him. Although the Du family looked prosperous, it was actually a mess internally. That was why he was able to take advantage of this situation. The North Vanquishing Prince's eyes moved, but no one could see any changes in his expression. His eyes were deep, and no one knew what he was thinking. On the ground of the square, Du Xiaofu looked around and heard the deafening cheers. He spat out another mouthful of blood, and the last of the lightning disappeared from the depths of his eyes. Then, he collapsed on the square. Night fell, and the bright moon hung in the sky. The entire imperial capital was still brightly lit, as if it was daytime. It was bustling with noise and discussions. Everyone was talking about the kingdom war in the day, and most importantly about the Valor Divine King Du Xiaofu. Scenes of ferocious and overbearing battles, continuous breakthroughs, martial lords defeating martial kings suppressing human kings, martial kings of the Tianhu Empire willingly admitting defeat, and Emperor Cheng bestowing him the title of King of Gai. All these discussions made people dance with joy. Their hearts surged and their blood boiled. Without a doubt, the Valor Divine King Du Xiaofu, the purple-robed young man's ferocious figure, was deeply imprinted in the hearts of everyone in the imperial capital. In the Valor Divine Marquis' residence, which was now the Valor Divine King's residence, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged in a quiet room in the courtyard. His body was shrouded in a faint golden light. "Brother Qingchun, how is my brother? Is he all right?" Outside the courtyard, Du Shaoqing looked at the illusory Zhan Qingchun with her innocent eyes. Her eyes were filled with worry. "He's fine. It's just that he has just broken through, and his aura is unstable. The mysterious martial vein spiritual seal in his body has affected him quite a bit. In addition to his injuries, he should be able to recover after a period of meditation," Zhan Qingchun said to Du Shaoqing. "That's great. I'll go tell Sister Shuang and the others. There are still many people waiting for the news." Du Shaoqing relaxed. She naturally believed Zhan Qingchuan's words and immediately left the courtyard. Strange, it's really strange. That martial vein was clearly awakened. So why did it disappear? What kind of martial vein is it? It's so terrifying. As he watched Du Shaoqing leave, Zhan Qingchuan's rather wretched triangular eyes were also filled with doubt and confusion. There were some things that even he could not understand. For example, he was completely unable to sense the existence of the terrifying martial vein in Du Xiaofu's body. Du Xiaoyao squatted on the stone table outside the courtyard. Her pale golden spirit eyes rippled as she said to Zhan Qingchun, "He has a lot of secrets on him. Anyway, it's good that he's fine. I'm afraid that he has caused too much of a ruckus this time. Although he is fine this time, I'm afraid that there will be a lot of trouble in the future. I'm afraid that it won't be long before all the old farts in the central region pay attention to him." Zhan Qingchun murmured and sighed softly. "I finally arrived. Yesterday, I still owe you all a chapter. Later today, Xiao Yu will repay the debt." Chapter 469. Time flowed like sand between one's fingers. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had quietly passed. In these 10 days, Du Xiaofu's name had already spread throughout the empire. From then on, the 9th king's mansion had also appeared in the Stone Dragon Empire. On the 11th day, dawn caught up with the night. A gray ray of light pierced through the hazy brown sky. A faint silver ring surrounded the horizon, and a warm red glow spread out. In the courtyard of the brave god mansion, on the bed in a room, a purple-robed young man with a wide purple sword on his back was shrouded in a faint golden halo. The morning sunlight shone in through the window, shining on the faint golden halo around his body. The golden halo rippled like a hazy mist, appearing dreamy and blurry as it flickered with brilliance. Huff! A moment later, the golden halo shrank, as if threads of golden energy were swirling around. Then, they all surged into the purple-robed young man's body. A mouthful of turbid air was spat out from his mouth. His eyelashes moved slightly as he opened his tightly shut eyes. A golden light flickered in his eyes, deep and dazzling. Boom! At the same time that his tightly shut eyes opened, a shocking aura swept out from Du Xiaofu's body, causing the entire room to tremble violently. Initial martial marquee. Feeling the abundant, profound energy in his body, the surging power brought about by the breakthrough made all the cells in Du Xiaofu's body jump and cheer. He could not help but want to cry out. After 10 days of breathing, the injuries on his body had more or less recovered under the cultivation method of the golden-winged Great Rock clan. This was also why the golden-winged Great Rock's recovery was so terrifying. The frivolous feeling brought about by the continuous breakthroughs in the Great Battle 10 days ago had already been completely stabilized. His aura was stable and solid, like a boulder that could not be shaken. Being able to break through the initial martial marquee level and step into the martial marquee level in such a short period of time made Du Xiaofu rather happy. During this process, Du Xiaofu was puzzled. It seemed to have something to do with the broken bones in his chest. The broken bone that he had mysteriously obtained from the barbaric Beast Mountain range was clearly related to the golden-winged Great Rock. Back then, after he had fused with it, he had obtained the cultivation method of the golden-winged Great Rock clan. It was also because of that broken bone that the blood in his body had become the golden blood of the golden-winged Great Rock. Du Xiaofu could still clearly remember the process of the broken bones this time. He had to thank Lu Kuan. If it was not for the fact that when he heavily injured Du Xiaofu, he had hit the broken bones in his chest, causing the evil aura to activate the purest energy and rock blood hidden within the broken bones. Du Xiaofu was afraid that he would not have been able to break through to the initial stage of the martial lord realm. At this moment, feeling the changes in his body, Du Xiaofu felt that the blood in his body seemed to have become even purer. Under the effect of the purest rock blood, his entire body had been raised to a higher level. His body had become even more powerful, as if his entire body had been completely refined once again. This kind of benefit was difficult for outsiders to describe. Only Du Xiaofu understood it the best. It could be said that he had profited from a disaster and had benefited greatly. As for the broken bones in his chest, this time, Lu Kuan had unintentionally fused with his body. As the purest rock blood within the broken bones flowed out, it connected with the two ends of the broken bones. With the assistance of the golden-winged Great Rocks cultivation method, the connection was already firm and inseparable, as if it had been reborn. What's wrong with you? There shouldn't be any major problems, right? Zheng Qingquan's illusory figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. His gaze was extremely serious as he curiously sized up Du Xiaofu. I should be able to fully recover in a few days. Looking at the familiar face in front of him, Du Xiaofu smiled slightly. Then, he jumped off the bed and stretched his body. Many joints in his body emitted cracking sounds. Zheng Qingquan's wretched gaze wavered slightly. He asked Du Xiaofu, "What about your mysterious martial veins? Have you awakened them?" Martial veins. Du Xiaofu raised his gaze slightly. He knew that Zheng Qingquan was asking about the mysterious net of light on his body. The net of light was formed by the connection of his martial veins. It was like a terrifying martial vein that was hidden deep within his body. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu immediately used his mind to probe his body. He closed his eyes slightly, and his expression began to change slightly. After a while, Du Xiaofu opened his eyes. A trace of doubt appeared on his face. "How is it?" Zheng Qingquan looked at Du Xiaofu and immediately asked curiously. Du Xiaofu shook his head. His eyes were filled with doubt as he said, "It disappeared. I couldn't sense it at all." During the probing just now, Du Xiaofu discovered that the mysterious net of light that had erupted with an astonishing pressure previously was actually the same as before. It actually disappeared without a trace in his body. There was no trace of it at all. At this moment, Du Xiaofu felt that the martial veins in his body were similar to normal martial veins. However, compared to before, they were much better. It disappeared? That's too strange. Zheng Qingquan looked at Du Xiaofu. His wretched gaze slightly sighed. He shook his head and said, "Actually, I also checked your body once. I thought you would be able to sense it yourself. It seems that there are many secrets in your body." "Brother Qingquan, why is it like this?" Du Xiaofu asked doubtfully. The mysterious power in his body clearly existed, but it was unfathomable and untraceable. From the situation that day, the people from the Du household are also related to the martial veins in your body. Therefore, we can directly rule out the inheritance from your mother's side. It seems that there must have been an extraordinary person among the ancestors of your Du family, an existence that even shocked the entire continent. Coincidentally, your body has hidden the inheritance of your ancestors' bloodline. The martial veins follow the inheritance of the bloodline, allowing you to inherit the inheritance of your ancestors' martial veins. However, it is extremely weak. This is similar to the phenomenon of the king-scaled demonic tiger. If you want to completely activate the hidden martial veins, you can only rely on luck. Perhaps you will not be able to awaken it in your entire life. This kind of thing is most likely something that can only be encountered and not sought. Zheng Qingquan thought for a while and said to Du Xiaofu seriously, "The ancestors of the Du family, could it be those two great people?" When Du Xiaofu heard this, he could not help but think of the matter of the two ancestors of the Du family that his elder sister Du Xiaoman had mentioned to him. At that time, of the two ancestors of the Du family, one stayed behind in the Stone City, while the other left the Stone City. Later on, it became the current Du household. That's right, when you fainted in the square, the people of the Du household wanted to bring you back to the Du household. I was afraid that they would have other thoughts, and I also knew that you were unwilling to go back. So I let Du Xiaoqing drive them away. Those people of the Du household are very wary of that girl." Zheng Qingquan said to Du Xiaofu. "Du household." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. In any case, right now he did not want to have too much to do with the Du household. What do you plan to do next? Jin Qingchun raised his eyebrows and looked at Du Xiaofu, reminding him, this time you have completely offended the Sky Snake sect. In the future, when you meet people from the Sky Snake sect, be careful. The Sky Snake sect is an old force in the central continent and is extremely powerful. Next, I want to look for my father, and then look for my mother and sister. I believe that my father should know the whereabouts of my mother and sister. As for the Sky Snake sect, it's fine as long as they don't provoke me. I don't want to provoke them. Du Xiaofu said softly. It was not easy for him to reach the martial marquis realm. After cultivating all the way, the final result for Du Xiaofu was to find his mother and sister and then reunite with his family. It was that simple. And this kind of simplicity was easy for ordinary people, but for Du Xiaofu, it was not an easy task. Even now, it was still out of his reach. After chatting with Jin Qingchun for a while, Du Xiaofu left the room and saw Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, Ouyang Shuang, Dark Wolf, Phantom, and the others outside. Seeing that Du Xiaofu seemed to have recovered completely, Du Xiaoqing and the others smiled. Then, Du Xiaofu learned from Dark Wolf, Phantom, Ouyang Shuang, and the others about what had happened in the past 10 days while he was meditating. During this period of time, all the major forces in the imperial capital Dragon City sent people to express their concern and sent many congratulatory gifts to congratulate him on being conferred king. However, the Du household was an exception. Moreover, it was said that many forces came with their daughters to congratulate him. In the imperial capital, the initial uproar gradually calmed down. It was said that the Stone Dragon Empire had also sent an army to the Tianhu Empire to take over 10 prefectures. In short, the Stone Dragon Empire's victory this time made everyone in the imperial capital excited. After the Courage Divine Marquis Prefecture became the Courage Divine King Manor, all kinds of benefits and personnel were greatly increased. As the master, Du Xiaofu more or less had to understand a little. Fortunately, Dark Wolf and Phantom were already extremely familiar with these matters and were capable of handling them. Currently, the entire mansion was under their control and everything was in order. Xie Fei from the Xie residence requests an audience with the Courage Divine King. In the small hall, Du Xiaofu, Ouyang Shuang, Phantom, Dark Wolf, and the others were talking about the imperial capital. Someone came to report to them outside the hall. Xie Fei. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows slightly with a smile in his eyes. It seemed that he should call her elder sister now. Outside the Courage Divine King Manor, an ice demon statue was hovering in the air. A charming lady dressed in a light blue dress stood outside the Courage God Manor. She did not have any makeup on, and her red lips were not dyed red. She was extremely charming. Sister Fei. Du Xiaofu appeared in front of Xie Fei with a faint smile on his face. I didn't expect the Courage Divine King to personally welcome me. I'm flattered. Xie Fei smiled sweetly. Her aura was like an orchid, and a few strands of hair casually fluttered around her waist. She looked extremely charming. Today's update ends. Brothers, rest early. Chapter 470. Are you making fun of me? Du Xiaofu could only smile bitterly as he looked at the charming lady before him. He recalled the North Vanquishing Prince's words. If this charming lady before him could not marry him in a few years, he would have no choice but to marry her. Awkwardness flashed across his eyes. Xie Fei looked at Du Xiaofu, the expression in her eyes fluctuating, as if she was rather surprised that he could recover to the point where there were no major problems in just 10 days. Looking at the young man with a broadsword on his back, her heart was also secretly rippling a little, but she did not show it on her face. Her red lips slightly parted as she said, I am not making fun of you. Grandpa asked me to come and see how you are recovering. I'm fine now. I'll visit Grandfather Xie in a few days, Du Xiaofu said. Du Xiaofu was about to lead Xie Fei into the mansion when the general, Ghost Child, Gu Xinyan, Wu Kei, and Gua Xiaofeng coincidentally arrived. The general and the other four had come together to check on Du Xiaofu's recovery. However, when they arrived at the Courage God Mansion and saw that Du Xiaofu was completely fine, they could not help but be surprised. Even their injuries were not as good as Du Xiaofu's. After a while, Everyone naturally could not help but chat in the mansion's main hall. As they chatted, the general, Ghost Child, and the others could not help but be shocked when they saw Du Xiaofu. The scene at the square back then had left them with lingering fear and shock. Everyone knew that from now on, it would be difficult for them to catch up with the fierce lord in front of them in terms of strength. Being able to defeat a martial king when he had just reached the martial marquis stage was simply abnormal. Your Highness, the first princess has arrived. While everyone was chatting, Dark Wolf hurried into the main hall and whispered into Du Xiaofu's ear. Just as Dark Wolf's voice sounded, a lady in an orange-red outfit had already walked into the hall. Her gaze swept across the hall as Xie Fei and the rest smiled. Her pearly white teeth gently parted as she said, "I saw the mounts outside and knew that all of you were here. Greetings, First Princess." Xie Fei, General, Ghost Child, Wu Kei, Ouyang Shuang, and the others stood up and bowed slightly. It could be said that other than Xie Fei, the others knew each other since they were young. They could even be considered childhood playmates. "Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous. This is outside the palace, not inside." The girl in tight attire walked forward with her long and slender legs. Her slender waist was so small that it could not be grasped with one hand. Her elegant temperament carried a hint of coldness, but at this moment, she revealed a charming smile. Finally, she looked at Xie Fei and said, "I did not expect Sister Fei to be here as well. Grandpa told me to come and see the brave God King, so here I am." Xie Fei's beautiful eyes flickered as she looked around, giving off a different kind of charm. Her beauty was extremely alluring. "Sister Fei, please send my regards to Grandpa Jinbei after you go back." The girl in tight attire was naturally First Princess Chengsheng. After she finished speaking to Xie Fei, she looked around the hall. Xie Fei, Ouyang Shuang, Gu Xinyan, and the others were all present. Her beautiful eyes flickered with a slight ripple before finally landing on Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu looked at First Princess Chengsheng. He originally wanted to hide, but in this situation, he was afraid that he could not hide anymore. Facing those beautiful eyes, he could only squeeze out a bitter smile. "Come with me. I have something to tell you." Cheng Shengnan secretly glared at Du Xiaofu, but her extremely beautiful face maintained a smile the whole time. "We're all on the same side, First Princess. If you have something to say, just say it here." After being stunned for a moment, Du Xiaofu immediately squeezed out a smile and said, he did not want to be alone with Cheng Shengnan. It would be bad if that woman suddenly attacked him. Moreover, he did not do it on purpose. Cheng Shengnan raised her head and walked to Du Xiaofu's side. She directly grabbed Du Xiaofu's arm and said, "Just come with me." As her voice faded, it was unknown whether it was intentional or not. But the First Princess Cheng Shengnan actually pulled Du Xiaofu's arm and walked out of the hall under everyone's surprised and complicated gazes. First Princess seems to have a good relationship with him. Wu Kei, Ouyang Shuang, Xie Fei, Gu Xinyan, and the others were all secretly surprised. "First Princess, what's the matter?" Du Xiaofu was being held by the First Princess. At this moment, he was definitely nervous. He knew very well that this woman would definitely attack at any moment. He had no choice but to be cautious. "It's nothing big. Why are you so nervous?" "Don't worry, I won't hold it against you in the past. However, if you dare to say anything, I won't let you off." The First Princess raised her head and glared at Du Xiaofu with her beautiful eyes. However, she did not let go of Du Xiaofu's arm and directly walked out of the mansion. She said, "Actually, it's my father who wants to see you. He has something important to discuss with you." Du Xiaofu was being held by the First Princess. He did not know when this woman would change her attitude again, so he did not dare to pull away. However, there was a faint fragrance beside him. It was like an orchid. For some reason, he felt a little restless. Inside the Courage God King mansion, many guards and maids were shocked when they saw this scene. "Greetings to the Courage God King. Look, the Courage God King is here. He is the Courage God King who defeated Lu Kuan from the Tianhu Empire and strengthened the prestige of our country." As Du Xiaofu entered the palace, there was a huge commotion in the palace. Along the way, many guards bowed respectfully with respect in their eyes. Outside the Golden Dragon Palace, the First Princess Cheng Shengnan said to Du Xiaofu, My father is waiting for you inside. You can go in. I'll wait for you outside. The Golden Dragon Palace was grand and magnificent. It had high eaves and green tiles. The rich imperial qi of the palace was still able to make Du Xiaofu's surroundings tremble for no reason when he stepped in. Inside the Golden Dragon Palace, a lifelike golden dragon was circling around. Emperor Cheng's aura was majestic without being angry. With a smile in his eyes, he looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "How are your injuries recovering?" "Greetings to Emperor Cheng. My injuries have recovered, and there are no longer any problems." Du Xiaofu bowed slightly. When he faced Emperor Cheng again, he still felt an indescribable majesty. This majesty was closely related to the imperial qi of the palace. "There's no need to be so polite. This time, I asked you to come here mainly to thank you on behalf of the entire empire." Emperor Cheng smiled faintly. The dragon shadow on his dragon robe moved like a living creature. He looked at Du Xiaofu with his deep eyes. He said, "This time, you defeated Lu Kuan from the Sky Snake sect and strengthened the prestige of our empire. You have made a great contribution. Therefore, I plan to give you the 10 prefectures that I want as your fief. How about that?" Fief. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was stunned. 10 prefectures. Who knew how many stone cities it would be? It was definitely a huge area. After pondering for a while, Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at Emperor Cheng. He said, "Emperor Cheng, I'm still young. I'm afraid this is not appropriate. I don't have the experience to manage 10 prefectures. Why don't we talk about it in the future?" Emperor Cheng's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when he heard this. He then smiled and said, "If that's the case, then we'll talk about this in the future. Go back and recuperate well. If there's anything in the future, you can come to me at any time. If necessary, we can use the power of the empire." "Thank you, Emperor Cheng." Du Xiaofu nodded to express his gratitude. He chatted with Emperor Cheng for a while before leaving. "How did the conversation with my father go?" In the royal palace, First Princess Cheng Shengnan sent Du Xiaofu out of the palace. She followed closely behind him with a charming smile on her face, which surprised many of the palace guards and maids. They had never seen the first princess behaving in such a feminine manner before. "We just chatted casually. We didn't talk much." Facing the woman beside him, Du Xiaofu felt uneasy. However, he knew that this woman could change her attitude at any moment. "When are you returning to Tianwu Academy?" Cheng Shengnan asked as she looked at the purple-robed young man beside her. She could still remember the domineering scene in the Spirit Canyon in the Savage Beast Mountain Range. This time, when he faced Lu Kuan from the Sky Snake sect, he was even more domineering, causing ripples in her heart. "It should be soon," Du Xiaofu replied. He was a disciple of Tianwu Academy, and there were many things that he had yet to learn. Naturally, he would have to return to Tianwu Academy. "After you return, if you have the time, will you come and visit me?" Cheng Shengnan suddenly looked at Du Xiaofu and asked seriously. Her tall figure was like a proud snow lotus, and her slender legs seemed to be teasing Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu was taken aback. Looking at the woman before him, he asked, "Why should I visit you?" "You." Hearing his words, Cheng Shengnan's expression changed. She looked at Du Xiaofu angrily and glared at Du Xiaofu before saying, "I won't be sending you off. You can leave the palace by yourself. Take this pill, it will help you recover from your injuries." As soon as she finished speaking, Cheng Shengnan smashed the jade bottle in her hand into Du Xiaofu's palm, after which she turned around and left. Women are truly fickle. A bitter smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face as he watched the exquisite and tall figure leave. Then, he left. "Idiot, you're definitely an idiot." Just as Du Xiaofu left the palace, Zhen Qingquan's voice sounded in his ears. Du Xiaofu took out the small pagoda from his bosom and placed it in his palm. He asked Zhen Qingquan, "How am I an idiot? That little girl has taken a liking to you. A little brat like you doesn't understand." Zhen Qing's mellow voice sounded out, and it revealed a feeling of age and seniority. "She has fallen for me." Du Xiaofu was stunned when he heard Zhen Qingquan's words. Zhen Qingquan continued, "I feel that this lass isn't bad. Her talent is barely passable, and she's pretty. Especially her figure, it's not bad. She's also the eldest princess of the Stone Dragon Empire. If you marry her, the entire Stone Dragon Empire might be yours in the future. I'm not interested in the Stone Dragon Empire. Du Xiaofu's eyes rippled when he heard Zhang Qingchuan's words. He muttered softly, I only want my family to be together. Chapter 471. Is that why you didn't want the 10 prefectures the Emperor of the Stone Dragon Empire gave you? Jin Qingchun teased. As the saying goes, one should take advantage of others. I'm still a student of Tianwu Academy, so I thought it would be easy for me, Du Xiaofu replied. At dusk, the sky was filled with red clouds and dazzling golden light. When Du Xiaofu returned to the Courage God Manor from the palace, it was already dusk. He met Dark Wolf at the entrance and found out that the general, CFA, and the others had already left. However, there was a guest from the Li clan who was personally received by Ouyang Shuang. Could it be Li Shui? Du Xiaofu guessed. The only person from the Li clan who could make Ouyang Shuang come out to receive them was Li Shui. A moment later, Du Xiaofu saw the person from the Li clan in the main hall. It was indeed Li Shui as he had guessed. However, that charming and seductive woman from back then was no longer as spirited as she was back then. Greetings, Courage God King. Li Shui was about to bow when Du Xiaofu stopped her. I'm still a student of Tianwu Academy. Senior, are you trying to make fun of me? I wouldn't dare to make fun of you. You're now the Empire's Courage God King, and your name is known throughout the Empire. Li Shui smiled. It was purely an accident. Du Xiaofu replied softly. He looked at the lady in front of him. She was still dressed in sexy clothes, and her figure was curvaceous. It was hard for him to look away. Let me tell you first. I'm here because of the Li clan. Li Shui smiled bitterly. Other than her father, almost all the elders in her clan wanted her to come to the Courage God Manor to get closer to them. They were even more enthusiastic than before about the Qin clan. They even wanted her to join the Courage God Manor. She could only sigh. Being born in the Li clan, she had no choice. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. It wasn't hard for him to understand Li Shui's intentions. Do you want to stay here for a few days? Li Shui smiled and looked at Ouyang Shuang. She then said to Du Xiaofu, I remember you told me that you have a world society, right? Yes. Du Xiaofu nodded slightly. More than half a year had passed. He did not know what the world was like now. However, with the Medicine King Yi Wuming, who was a 6-star spiritual talisman master, and the Eagle King Gong Dao, who was a martial king, there should not be anything difficult to deal with in the Chaos Demon City. Seeing this, Li Shui smiled and asked, I don't plan to return to the academy, nor do I want to stay in the imperial capital. Your world society shouldn't be in the imperial capital, right? I want to join the world society. I wonder if you'll accept me? Of course, if you want to go, you can go at any time. Du Xiaofu was stunned for a moment before he smiled. No problem, it's a deal then. Li Shui's eyes revealed a smile, and her eyes flickered with excitement. You haven't fully recovered yet, so rest early. Li Shui wants to stay in the Courage God Manor for a few days, so I'll accompany her to her room. After Ouyang Shuang finished speaking to Du Xiaofu, she pulled Li Shui and left. On her beautiful face, she looked at Du Xiaofu with an unapproachable look. Did I offend this tomboy again? Looking at Ouyang Shuang's back, Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with doubt. At night, the moonlight rippled in the sky, tranquil and gentle. Du Xiaofu returned to his room and sat cross-legged, continuing to regulate his breathing. In his mind, he was also comprehending the sacred body technique of his master, the revered weapon. Night fell, and a bright crescent moon streaked across the exquisite cornice, sprinkling a hazy yellow light all around, making the vast and magnificent palace appear mysterious and quiet. In the middle of the palace, the magnificent Golden Dragon Palace stood in the night, looking like a golden, magnificent palace. Shangnan, has there been any news from your sect, the Divine Court? Emperor Cheng asked the first princess in the Golden Dragon Palace. His voice was low and deep, with a hint of magnetism. Not yet, but I believe that my sect has already received the news. Perhaps there will be news soon. Cheng Shengnan replied softly with a hint of worry in his eyes. He then looked at Emperor Cheng and asked, Father, what did you talk to him about today? I wanted to give him the 10 residences, but he had no intention of doing so. Emperor Cheng looked at Cheng Xingnan and sighed. It seems like he doesn't care about the entire empire. If only he wasn't from Tianwu Academy, then I wouldn't be in such a difficult position. If only he wasn't from Tianwu Academy, Cheng Xingnan said softly with a serious look in his eyes. The curtain of night enveloped the boundless mountainous region. Enormous cities were built one after another, like a black, ancient, vicious beast that coiled and spiraled across the horizon. It was incomparably majestic. Mountain ranges overlapped one another, and numerous palaces towered, giving off a grand and imposing aura. In one of the majestic palaces, there were carved beams and painted rafters. Lightning runes covered the entire palace, turning into inscriptions. I never expected that Tianwu Academy would produce such a student. In order to prevent Tianwu Academy from rising from the ashes, we can't wait any longer. Let's make our move. In the center of the palace, an old man in his 70s spoke with a majestic voice that seemed to be able to look down on the world. His voice shook the entire central region. Divine Sect, what should we do about the Stone Dragon Empire? There are still people in the Stone Dragon Empire's royal family who are related to us. An old man in the palace asked. There's no need to bother about the small Stone Dragon Empire. Tianwu Academy can't wait any longer. We must obtain that item. The old man in his 70s said, let the people we have in the dark do it. Otherwise, it will be disadvantageous for us if word of it gets out. It should be enough to wipe out the declining Tianwu Academy. Yes. Inside the main hall, the experts who were famous throughout the Central Plains respectfully retreated one after another. Tianwu Academy was extraordinary in the past. It's a pity that it declined. It seems like it will be erased from the central region in the future. After the silhouettes left the great hall, a strange light spread out. A silhouette stood there. The light around him was like silver snakes flickering with electricity, enveloping his entire body. It was so domineering that no one dared to approach him. They could only look up at him. Greetings, envoy. We should have the whereabouts of the descendant of the clan we're looking for. It's the King Du residence of the Stone Dragon Empire. The cultivation technique of that clan is related to lightning. Not long ago, a brat named Du Xiaofu defeated a sovereign realm junior from the Sky Snake sect with the power of lightning. Looking at the newcomer, the old man in his 70s stood up and said respectfully, envoy, you said that the descendant of that clan might be hidden from the world, but their talent is extraordinary. It's related to the cultivation technique of lightning. I believe that the person from the Du family should be the hidden descendant of the clan you're looking for. Stone Dragon Empire, King Du residence, Du family. Within the lightning ball, a terrifying aura fluctuated, causing the entire palace to tremble. The next morning, the morning breeze blew gently, and the morning light shone brightly. Above the horizon, a few stars gradually faded away with the first rays of the morning sun. Outside the Courage God Mansion, a tall and sturdy young man stood quietly. He was wearing a blue and white robe. His eyes were slightly closed, as if he had been waiting for a long time. Phew! In the room, Du Xiaofu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and stopped breathing. His face was ruddy, and his eyes shone brightly. After a while, Du Xiaofu saw Qingguyu in the small hall of the mansion. The domineering aura on his body had become more stable and restrained. Have you thought it through? Du Xiaofu knew why Qingguyu had come. Looking at Qingguyu, who could still stand up after suffering such a huge blow, Du Xiaofu could vaguely see himself in him. Qingguyu looked at the purple-robed young man in front of him and said softly, I don't need to think about it. I have already made up my mind. I am just waiting for you to recover faster. Since you have already made your choice, let's begin. However, I still have to make it clear that I am not very confident. If I fail, or if you can't endure it, the consequences will be extremely serious. You will most likely lose your life. Du Xiaofu said seriously. Let's begin. I have been waiting for a long time. Qingguyu said. His expression was calmer than Du Xiaofu's. All right then. Du Xiaofu nodded. Then, he went to a quiet courtyard in the mansion. He found Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, Little Tiger, Dark Wolf, and Huan Ying to protect him. After setting up a seal outside the courtyard, he entered with Qingguyu. In an empty room in the courtyard, Du Xiaofu looked at the ancient jade in front of him and said, We're about to begin. Your divine watchtower has been shattered. If you want to step onto the martial path again, you'll have to rely on some special methods. I can't help you restore your divine watchtower, but I have a special cultivation method for cultivating the physical body. It's especially suitable for people with broken divine watchtowers to cultivate their physical body. It's rumored that if you cultivate it to the extreme, you'll be able to reach the peak of the martial path with your physical body. In addition, I have a special physical body cultivation technique. If you use it with a physical body cultivation technique, you will be like a tiger that has grown wings. However, I am not very confident in this physical body cultivation technique. You can also choose a physical body cultivation technique. A physical body cultivation technique that will allow you to reach the pinnacle of the path of cultivation with your physical body. Qinggu Yu's eyes finally rippled when he heard this. His chest heaved as he looked at Du Xiaofu with determination and said, "If I can become like a tiger that has grown wings, then I naturally can't fall behind. Let's begin." All right. Du Xiaofu nodded as he gradually calmed himself down. He took a deep breath and waved his hand. A pill slowly landed in front of Qinggu Yu and said, "This is a body protection pill. It can protect your internal organs from the high temperature. I will refine your body later and place some traps on it. If I succeed, it will be a great support for you in the future, but if I fail, you will most likely die. I trust you." Qinggu Yu took the pill from Du Xiaofu without any hesitation and stuffed it into his mouth. He had already spent enough time thinking and hesitating. Since he was here, he could only trust Du Xiaofu. Chapter 472. I'll do my best. Du Xiaofu nodded and formed a seal with his hands. A spiritual stove symbol cauldron immediately condensed in front of him. A blazing aura surged as flames leapt out of the spiritual stove symbol cauldron. The blazing aura caused Qinggu Yu's mind to ripple. Now that he had lost all of his cultivation, he almost wanted to crawl and tremble. "I'm going to refine a body for you now. You have to enter my spiritual stove symbol cauldron and refine the impurities out of it. This process is extremely dangerous. If you can't withstand it, then everything will be for naught," Du Xiaofu said to Qinggu Yu. "I understand." Qinggu Yu nodded and squatted down, before jumping into Du Xiaofu's spiritual furnace and talisman cauldron. As soon as he jumped into the spiritual stove symbol cauldron, Qinggu Yu let out a blood-curdling scream. The instant his clothes touched the spiritual stove symbol cauldron, they were burned to ashes by the high temperature. The flames burned his body, and his hair stood on end. His long black hair was also burned to ashes. As the flames entered his body, not only his skin, but even the depths of his soul suddenly felt a burning pain. The sudden searing pain caused the ancient jade soul to feel as if it was being evaporated by the high temperature. His skin shriveled up due to the searing pain, just like the skin of an animal that was being burned by fire. Sizzling sounds could be heard as oil began to seep out of his skin. However, Qinggu Yu was still a martial lord. Although his cultivation was crippled and his spirit gate shattered, his body was still a martial lord's body. There was still some residual Xin Qi in his meridians, and his mental state was definitely at the martial lord level. After a blood-curdling scream, Du Xiaofu didn't control the temperature of the flames too high. Although Qinggu Yu's entire body was in incomparable pain, he was still able to withstand it. Walala. At the same time, the protective pill that Qinggu Yu had just consumed also began to take effect within his body. A burst of rich medicinal power spread through his body, enveloping his internal organs and warding off the lethal heat that was seeping into his body. However, the high temperature of the flames still caused his internal organs, bones, muscles, cells, and blood vessels to twitch intensely. It was so painful that he could not speak. "I must resist it," Du Xiaofu said to the ancient jade inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron. His hand seals changed, and a white divine energy spread out from his body, shaking the whole space. Using his spiritual energy to control the temperature inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron, Du Xiaofu started to forge the eternal jade body according to the saint body secrets. In order to help Qinggu Yu use the saint body secrets, Du Xiaofu had been taking the time to comprehend the saint body secrets. He had also taken the time to refine the protective pill before the kingdom war with the Tianhu Empire. This was the first time that Du Xiaofu was using the saint body secrets left behind by his master, the revered artifact master, so he did not dare to be careless. He was extremely nervous and focused. The saint body secrets were similar to a body refining technique, but it was not the same. It refined the cultivator's body like a spiritual artifact. At the same time, it could refine some beast energy secret techniques and even talisman arrays into the body. At the end of the refinement, the body would be comparable to a Tao artifact, a spiritual artifact, or a saint artifact. If news of Du Xiaofu's plan spread, people would probably call him crazy. Only the current Qinggu Yu would believe that Du Xiaofu could succeed. Of course, Qinggu Yu believed in Du Xiaofu because he had no other choice. If it was in the past, he probably would not have believed in Du Xiaofu. However, Du Xiaofu believed that his master, the revered artifact master, would definitely succeed. It was just that the difficulty was not ordinary. From what his master had left behind, Du Xiaofu knew that his master had experimented with the saint body secrets and had succeeded before. Walala. He controlled the flames in the cauldron to expel the impurities in Qinggu Yu's body. Under the flames, bursts of white smoke burst out, and sizzling sounds could be heard from the cauldron. As time passed, the impurities in Qinggu Yu's body were burned out and turned into ashes in the flames. However, Qinggu Yu was in a miserable state during this process. His skin was about to explode from the flames. The pain was indescribable and indescribable. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to bear it, they wouldn't even be able to bear it. But Qinggu Yu gritted his teeth and endured the inhuman pain. His eyes were bloodshot, and anyone who looked at him would tremble in fear. This was an extremely time-consuming process, and it lasted for a full 48 hours. For Qinggu Yu, this was definitely the longest time he had ever spent in his life. The energy of the body protection pill in Qinggu Yu's body began to disappear. His internal organs, meridians, and blood vessels were twitching under the high temperature. His body began to emit sizzling smoke, which spread out from his nostrils, mouth, ears, and even eyes. However, at least on the surface, Qinggu Yu's body had undergone a huge change. His whole body was shining with a luster, as if he had been poured with metal, and he was emitting a sense of explosive power. Chi. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed, and the flames inside the cauldron dissipated by more than half. Immediately, Qinggu Yu's pain lessened by a lot. Next, I will set up some talisman arrays and secret techniques on your body. It should be extremely painful, so continue to resist. Du Xiaofu's face was pale after spending 48 hours in a row. His consumption was astonishing. As soon as Du Xiaofu's voice fell, he condensed a handprint. The mysterious runes of the talisman immediately spread out rapidly, and a faint wave of energy spread around his body. What Du Xiaofu had to do next was to inscribe some special talisman arrays and secret beastly techniques on the ancient jade's body. Adding the burning flames of the spiritual furnace and talisman cauldron, he had to inscribe them in the depths of the bones. Only then could these talisman arrays and secret beastly techniques completely fuse with the ancient jade. And this process was absolutely a huge project for Du Xiaofu. It involved many complicated steps, comprehension of talisman arrays and secret techniques, and finally refining them into Qinggu Yu's body. Any one of these steps was enough to make ordinary talisman masters shrink back, and some talisman masters wouldn't even dare to do it after learning of the process. To Qinggu Yu, this was even more excruciating than the searing pain of his body refinement. The beast energy secret technique and talisman formations were inscribed deep into his bones, and it was far more excruciating than the bone-scraping pain. And at this time, one was willing to take the hit, and the other was willing to take the hit. Even if the revered artifact master himself was here, he would be speechless. It could be said that these two people didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A moment later, a heart-shaking howl was heard again in the room. Du Xiaofu's hand seals fell on Qinggu Yu's body, and with a radiance of energy, they made Qinggu Yu's body bubble like fluctuations before disappearing. And during this process, Qinggu Yu was unceasingly screaming. Walala! As the talisman arrays entered Qinggu Yu's body, energy fluctuations began to spread from Qianguyu's body. These energy fluctuations were extremely mysterious, as if they could communicate with and absorb the energy of heaven and earth around Qianguyu. Qianguyu, you have to hold on. Looking at the talisman arrays falling on Qianguyu's body, Du Xiaofu's expression became more and more solemn. The talisman arrays continued to be carved into Qianguyu's body, causing a strange energy fluctuation to spread throughout Qianguyu's body. And so, time continued to pass, and Qianguyu continued to scream. Effort and reward were proportional. At this moment, as long as the ancient jade could withstand Du Xiaofu's attack and Du Xiaofu could succeed, the magnificent ancient jade of Tianwu Academy would be able to rise from the ashes and return to the path of martial arts. It might even be stronger than it was in the past. Unbelievable. This is simply unbelievable. There was actually a third person in the room at this moment. Zheng Qingchuan's illusory body had appeared in the room at some point in time, and his inverted triangle eyes were filled with shock and disbelief as he looked at the two arrogant people in the room. With Zheng Qingchuan's keen eyesight and rich experience, he more or less knew what Du Xiaofu and Qianguyu were doing, and this unbelievable scene was enough to shock him. Little Tiger and Du Xiaoqing were responsible for protecting Qianguyu and Qianguyu. As they listened to the incessant screams in the courtyard, their eyes were filled with confusion, but they also stayed close to Qianguyu and Qianguyu. Even the playful Du Xiaoqing put away her playful thoughts and focused on protecting Qianguyu and Qianguyu after receiving instructions from her brother. At the same time, in the imperial capital Dragon City, Du Manor, there was an ancient stone coffin in the main hall of the Du Manor, and it exuded an ancient aura. If Du Xiaofu was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that this stone coffin was actually the stone coffin in the Du family's ancestral hall in Stone City. For some reason, this stone coffin had actually appeared in the Du household. This stone coffin's aura is ancient, and it seems to have some history. Could it be that this was left behind by our Du family's ancestors? Many elders and experts of the Du Manor surrounded the stone coffin and sized it up. Old 6, Old 5, did you find the treasures of the Du family? Why are you all injured? Why did you bring back a sarcophagus? What about the other members of the family who went to the Stone City with you? An old man asked two pale-faced middle-aged men in the hall. A pale-faced man's eyes were filled with coldness as he said, "After we went to Stone City, we searched many places, but we didn't find anything special. We also didn't find any information about the Du family's treasure. However, we found that the stone coffin in the ancestral hall seemed to be extremely ancient and extraordinary, so we wanted to take it back for a look. Who knew that the Du family branch in Stone City wouldn't agree and attacked us?" Today's update is complete. Chapter 473. Don't tell me that the Du family of the Stone City has someone who is a match for you? The old man asked doubtfully. Old 5 and Old 6 were both at the Martial Lord realm. How could a small branch of the Stone City have a Martial Lord realm cultivator? The Du family does not have a Martial Lord realm cultivator. Naturally, they were not our match at the start. However, we did not expect that there would be a Beast King realm cultivator in the Stone City. Furthermore, the Beast King realm cultivator's relationship with the Stone City's Du family is extremely good. Therefore, we suffered a great loss. If we did not escape quickly, we would not have been able to return. Another man with a pale face replied. There was still some lingering fear in his eyes. He was extremely wary of the Beast King realm cultivator. That Beast King realm cultivator was definitely an extraordinary existence. Hearing this, the old man's eyes rippled. He then looked at the stone coffin that gave off an ancient aura and said, I did not expect that a small stone city would have a Beast King realm cultivator. However, this stone coffin may have been left behind by our Du family ancestor. Perhaps there are some secrets. The Du family's belongings should be left in our Du household. The Du family's Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaofu are extraordinary. During the battle with the Tianhu Empire's Lu Kuan, Du Xiaofu awakened a type of martial vein. It is obviously related to our ancestor. Could it be related to this stone coffin? If we do not find any treasures in the Du family, then it is very likely that it is related to this stone coffin. If everyone in the Du household can benefit from it, then we will not have to worry about prosperity. One by one, the Du family experts probed the stone coffin, hoping to find some secrets. During the battle with the Tianhu Empire's Lu Kuan, Du Xiaofu was simply too powerful. That kind of pressure had shocked everyone in the Du family. If they could find the secret and benefit everyone in the Du family, then the Du family would not have to worry about prosperity. Sigh. Inside the main hall, a burly man let out a long sigh and said in a low voice, "I hope that your actions will not bring disaster to the Du household, elders and protectors. This stone coffin was left behind by the ancestor of the Du clan. It has always been in the Du clan's residence. We should maintain a respectful attitude towards the things left behind by the ancestor. Let's return it to the city." The Protector King spoke. Lightning flickered in his eyes as he sighed. Family head. The legacy of the Du family's ancestors should be in my Du residence. Family head. There might be some secret in this stone coffin. For the sake of our Du household, we must not send it back to Stone City. Could it be that the Du family branch of Little Stone City really dares to rebel? The things left behind by our ancestors should naturally remain in my Du palace. Immediately, an old man spoke to the king, feeling that the sarcophagus should be left in the Du palace. After so many years in the Du household, you all have already taken everything for granted. Today, your actions will definitely bring about a calamity for the Du family. From today onwards, I will begin my closed-door training. You all better take care of yourselves." After the king finished speaking, he sighed and left the main hall. In the room, Du Xiaofu's spiritual furnace and symbol cauldron had already been withdrawn. At this moment, in the open space, there was a figure wrapped in the energy of the world sitting cross-legged. His naked body could be faintly seen. "Hugh!" Du Xiaofu exhaled deeply from his abdomen when he saw the figure that was seated cross-legged within the energy. His heart also relaxed a little. Although his face was as pale as ash, his eyes revealed a smile. Was it a success? Jin Qingchuan's rather illusory figure floated beside Du Xiaofu, looking curiously at the figure wrapped in energy. It should be considered a success, but the rest will depend on him. A smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face. He had done what he had to do, and now the Qinggu Jade had to rely on itself. If the Qinggu Jade could successfully fuse with the Beast Energy Secret Method and the Talisman Array, then the Qinggu Jade would be able to rise to power in a different way. However, when Qinggu Yu could once again step onto the martial path, how strong would he be? Du Xiaofu could not estimate it. What an incredible method, as expected of the venerable weapon of the Central Plains. Jin Qingchun sighed. Knowing that the holy body art used by Du Xiaofu was also left behind by the venerable weapon, he was extremely shocked. "Brother Qingchun, I also need your cultivation method." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. The holy body art was left behind by his master, the venerable weapon, but the body cultivation method was left behind by his elder brother, Jin Qingchun. The physical body cultivation technique was given to me by someone when they asked me for help. Only those with broken spirit watchtowers can cultivate it, and it's extremely difficult. It requires great willpower and perseverance to cultivate it. This ancient jade can even endure this kind of body tempering, so it's definitely qualified, Jin Qingchun said. Everything from now on depends on him. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. He had consumed a lot of elixirs and pills in the past few days. However, it was still a little difficult for him to endure. But he had successfully endured it. After that, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged to the side and closed his eyes. He also entered a state of breathing and adjusting his breathing. In particular, he needed to recover his spiritual and soul power. Immediately, his body was covered with a white divine light as he recovered the huge amount of energy he had consumed in the past few days. As Du Xiaofu entered the state of meditation, Jin Qingchun also returned to the small tower. The room fell into silence. Only the energy fluctuation around the Qinggu Yu could be heard, and there was a faint whistling sound. At night, the bamboo forest was very quiet. In the bamboo forest, Xiefei was sitting on a bamboo chair in front of the North Vanquishing Prince. She frowned and said, "The Du Palace seems to have gone to the Du family in the Stone City, the place where Xiaofu came from. According to our people, the Du Palace made a big fuss in the Stone City. In the end, they even robbed the Du family's ancestors' coffin. However, the The Dew Palace seems to have suffered a lot as well. There seems to be a beast king expert in the Stone City. What a Dew Palace, what a Dew Palace. They have gone too far. Do they really think that my grandson is useless? Without his parents by his side, anyone can bully him. Hearing this, the North vanquishing prince was furious. On his skinny and dark face, there was anger surging in his eyes. He said to Xie Fei, come with me to the brave God Palace. Grandpa, your body is getting worse and worse. If there is anything you need to do, just leave it to me. Xie Fei was worried about her grandpa's health. You can't do this. The Dew Palace wants to hide what happened in the past. I'm afraid that they don't want to remove the veil. Now that they are bullying people, don't blame me for not being able to stand it. I will remove the veil. The North vanquishing prince stood up. Wearing a plain robe, he looked like a bamboo pole carrying a cloth bag. On his skinny and dark face, there was anger surging in his eyes. Night fell, and the stars shone brightly. Flap, flap, in midair, a flying demonic beast that was not weak flapped its wings and streaked across the night sky. On the back of the flying demonic beast, there were 3 figures sitting cross-legged, 2 men and 1 woman. The 3 of them had extremely grave expressions. One of them was a middle-aged man with a pale face. His left arm was missing from his shoulder. We are almost there. The imperial capital Dragon City is not far ahead. Third brother should be in the imperial capital now. Third brother will definitely have a way. First uncle will definitely be fine. On the back of the flying demonic beast, an extraordinary young man softly said. His eyes were filled with unconcealable anger. Early in the morning, there was a mottled halo that shone into the room. Du Xiaofu closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. Half a day and a night quickly passed by. When the mental energy in his body had completely recovered, all the fatigue had disappeared. He slowly opened his eyes. A pale golden light flickered and his eyes became clear. Huff! After spitting out a mouthful of turbid air, Du Xiaofu immediately looked at Qingguyu, who was not far away from him. At this moment, he saw that Qingguyu's body was still surrounded by energy fluctuations. There was no other movement. On the surface of Qingguyu's body, mysterious runes began to faintly flicker. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu seemed to have felt some kind of fluctuation. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately stood up. Grandpa Xie, why are you here? Outside the courtyard, the morning breeze blew gently and the air was fresh. Outside the courtyard, Du Xiaofu saw the North vanquishing prince and Xie Fei, who were blocked by Du Xiaoqing and the little tiger, standing outside the courtyard. He was extremely surprised. How's the recovery of your injuries? Seeing Du Xiaofu, the North vanquishing prince squeezed out a smile on his wrinkled face. It's no longer a big problem. I'm almost fully recovered. Du Xiaofu smiled. After patting Du Xiaoqing, he walked over to the North vanquishing prince and said, Grandpa Xie, if you have something to do, you can just let me know. Why did you come so far? Take care of your body. Du Xiaofu planned to make a trip back to the Chaos Demon City in a few days. At the same time, he planned to ask the Medicine King Yi Wuming if there was any other way to save the North vanquishing prince. That's good. It's good that you're recovering well. I'm here to see you. At the same time, I have some things to discuss with you. Let's find a quiet place. The North vanquishing prince's smile disappeared and his expression turned serious. He looked at Du Xiaofu and sighed. Okay. Du Xiaofu looked at the North vanquishing prince for a while and nodded. Naturally, there were many quiet places in the huge Courage God Mansion. After a while, Du Xiaofu helped the North vanquishing prince to a small courtyard. Xiaofu, do you want to know what happened to your father in the Du household? In the small hall in the courtyard, the North vanquishing prince looked at Du Xiaofu and asked. Yes. Du Xiaofu did not hesitate and nodded at the North vanquishing prince. His eyes were filled with emotions. I didn't tell you back then because I didn't expect the Du household to bully others. You are your father's son, so you have the right to know. Today, I will tell you everything I know. I hope you can be mentally prepared. The North vanquishing prince sighed softly. Chapter 474. As soon as North vanquishing prince finished speaking, he formed a seal with his hands. On his wrinkled face, A rune light gushed out from between his eyebrows, instantly bursting out with a dazzling light like the bright moon. Then, it illuminated the entire space like morning dew, emitting a faint icy aura. Walala! Du Xiaofu's gaze was fixed on the dazzling rune between North Vanquishing Prince's eyebrows. That dazzling rune light was like a painting in the void being pulled open in front of him. Then, a large amount of rune light fluctuated, causing the space to walala sound. It was obscure and profound, and finally enveloped the space, including Du Xiaofu. His vision blurred, and Du Xiaofu seemed to have appeared in an unfamiliar space. Then, he realized that this space was actually the imperial capital, Dragon City, right outside the Du Palace. But at this time, the space around him was rippling with a mysterious fluctuation, isolating a large area of space outside, only enveloping the huge Du Palace. Outside the Du Palace, there were many ferocious birds and beasts standing in the air. There were ferocious Cheong Chi Kama Bas that sounded like a drum, Bais that had 3 heads and 6 tails, and Wan that had 5 colors. Roar! Ao! Many terrifying beasts roared like thunder, their bodies exuding a terrifying aura. The ferocious birds' voices pierced through gold and cracked stone. Their bodies were like dark clouds, their aura causing people's hearts to tremble. On top of the ferocious beasts, there were many figures standing. The aura around them was like a dazzling sun, causing people to be unable to look directly at them. It was as if the stars had descended, causing the sky above the Du Palace to be filled with light. It was as if a god had descended to the world, overlooking the world with disdain. Outside the Du Palace, all the people of the Du family trembled and prostrated themselves. Inside the Du Palace, there were only a dozen or so people whose bodies were covered in light, barely able to resist the terrifying aura. Among these dozen or so people, Du Xiaofu saw 4 familiar figures. One of them was the North Vanquishing Prince, who was covered in a cold light, resisting the terrifying aura. The King Protector of the Du Palace was also among them. However, the King Protector was only around 30 years old, still extremely young and extraordinary. His hand was tightly holding the hand of a 6 or 7-year-old boy, whose eyes were already filled with lightning, looking extraordinary. It was the appearance of the Du family Du Chong when he was young. Among the crowd, Du Xiaofu saw 2 extraordinary figures, a man and a woman. The woman, proud and independent. There was no fear in her eyes. There was not the slightest bit of fear as she looked at the terrifying figure like the dazzling sun. There were 2 babies, 2 Dragon King. Beside the otherworldly woman was a young man with a dignified appearance. He was dressed in a battle robe, and his fists were clenched. His face was resolute, and his eyes emitted cold stars with lightning radiating from them. Father, mother. Seeing the young man and woman, Du Xiaofu wanted to say something, but found that he could not say anything. The young man and woman were his drunkard father and mother, and the 2 babies in his mother's arms that seemed to have just been born were him and his sister. In front of the Du residence, there were 2 old men standing there, their eyes flickering with lightning. One of the old men, who looked to be in his 60s or 70s, stared at the terrifying figures descending from the sky, as well as the terrifying ferocious beasts. Sirs, Du Tingxian and his wife have nothing to do with our Du household. Please do not harm the innocent. Du Tingxian stood proudly, on his resolute face. His eyes emitted cold stars, his battle robe fluttering. Facing the terrifying figures in front of him, he shouted, I have nothing to do with the Du Palace. If there is anything, just come at me. Please do not harm the innocent. Sirs, we have nothing to do with Du Tingxian and his wife. From now on, the Du Palace and Du Tingxian will no longer have anything to do with each other. Please do not harm the innocent and treat human life like grass. In front of the prostrating Du family, many old men opened their mouths, their eyes filled with fear. Under such terrifying pressure, they were very clear that they were no match for them and had no power to resist. Aotong, did you see that? These mortals are heartless. Come with me. On top of the beasts, someone shouted, his voice shaking the heavens, containing endless ancient majesty, like thunder resounding through the sky. reverberating for a long time. Second protector, why are you struggling? The woman looked at the terrifying figure that was as bright as the sun with a pleading look in her eyes. If you don't come with me, then don't blame me for being impolite. After the thunderous shout, the star-like figure swept through the sky, waving his hand, directly pouncing towards the woman. Aotong, be careful, Du Tingxian shouted, waving his hand, runes flashing, a fist drawing the thunder clouds in the sky. Like a thunderbolt sweeping out, the sound was like thunder, immediately blocking the attack. Little lowly commoner, you are not qualified. The shout was heard, the light was dazzling. The mysterious runes were monstrous, and a palm suddenly bombarded Du Tingxuan's fist. Boom! There was an explosion in the air. The fist and the palm collided, the energy runes blooming, unexpectedly resisting. Presumptuous. Once again, several star-like figures rushed out. The power was overwhelming, besieging Du Tingxian. Rumble. Du Tingxian resisted with all his strength, and suddenly this side of the world trembled. The surrounding space waves exploded one after another, and the courtyard below cracked and collapsed, then turned into dust in the terrifying energy sweep. The Du family watched, but no one came to help, watching Du Tingxian being besieged. The two old men at the front were fluctuating with lightning, and no one knew what they were thinking. Pucci finally, Du Tingxian spat out blood from the corner of his mouth, and his body was suddenly knocked back. Step by step, the ground cracked and turned into dust. The people of the Du family who were crawling all around, one after another, retreated, fear in their eyes, as if they were afraid of provoking an unexpected disaster, and no one came forward to care. Tingxian, the otherworldly woman, came to Du Tingxuan's side. Her eyes were dignified and dim. Take care of Xiaofu and Xiaojing. I'm fine. Du Tingxian stepped forward, protecting the otherworldly woman. Let's go. It won't be easy for them to catch us. The otherworldly woman held a jade slip in her hand, and then she crushed it. The surrounding space fluctuated, and then the two disappeared. We can't escape. Jade strips were crushed in the hands of many figures within the star-like figures, following which, many terrifying figures and those monstrous ferocious beasts suddenly disappeared. It was as though they had never been here. Walala, the space and the surroundings disappeared, and the imperial capital Dragon City appeared clearly. Countless gazes were fixed in the direction of the Du family, and they trembled in fear. No one knew what happened in the Du family. The scene in front of him disappeared, and Du Xiaofu's consciousness returned to the small hall. His eyes were moist, and his fists were clenched tightly. Father, Mother, Du Xiaofu called out softly. Being in the Du family, the blood of the Du family's ancestors flowed in his veins, and they were of the same origin. Those people of the Du family actually watched as his father was surrounded by experts, and their own family was in danger, but the Du family was so heartless. The North vanquishing prince looked at Du Xiaofu, and on his wrinkled face, there was a hint of heartache. Back then, your father took out a Huangji pellet from the Tianwu Academy. Do you know about this?
Yes.
Du Xiaofu looked at the North vanquishing prince and nodded. When he was in Orchid City, he already knew about this from Aunt Shan and Ouyang Shuang. This was also the reason why his father was listed on the Tianwu Academy's bounty list. The North vanquishing prince's eyes flickered, and his expression sank. The Du family's Du Chong was born, and his talent was extraordinary. According to what I know, the Du family hoped that Du Chong's future would be bright, and they wanted to obtain the Huangji pellet from the Tianwu Academy. They wanted to give Du Chong the Huangji pellet from the Tianwu Academy to strengthen the Stone City's Du family. But who would have thought that not only did the Du family sever ties with your father, they even ignored the Stone City's Du family. Heartless and heartless. Du Xiaofu clenched his fists, and his clear eyes flickered with anger. He didn't expect that his father took the Huangji pellet from the Tianwu Academy for the Du family's Du Chong. And when his family was facing a strong enemy, the Du family was heartless and heartless. How could Du Xiaofu not be angry? At this moment, Du Xiaofu was angry for his drunkard father, and for himself, a descendant of the Du family. The North vanquishing prince hesitated for a moment before continuing to speak to Du Xiaofu. I received news that not long ago, someone from the Du family went to the Stone City's Du family. There should have been quite a bit of conflict, but in the end, the Du family seized a stone coffin from the Stone City's Du family. They suspected that it was a treasure of the Stone City's Du family that could benefit the Du family, so they planned to take it for themselves. Boom! Following the North vanquishing prince's words, a golden light shot out from Du Xiaofu's eyes. A wave of qi rushed out from his body, and his eyes were filled with anger. Every time he woke up from the stone coffin, the elders of the Stone City's Du family would specially warn him that the stone coffin in the ancestral hall was something left behind by the ancestors of the Du family. If he climbed into the stone coffin again, he would be severely punished. Now that the stone coffin had arrived at the Du family's ancestral hall, Du Xiaofu definitely knew what had happened. How could his first and second uncles, as well as the elders of the Du family, allow others to touch the ancestral hall so easily? Even if it was the people of the Du family, they definitely wouldn't allow it. Unless, the people of the Du family had already made a big fuss in the Stone City's Du family, and with the Stone City's Du family's strength, it was impossible for them to resist. Early in the morning, outside the Courage God Mansion, 2 men and a woman arrived. One was a young man, one was a brawny man, and the other was a woman. The young man was brawny and wore a cloud robe. He had an extraordinary aura, and his shoulder-length black hair fluttered in the wind. His bronze skin had a faint xian qi luster flowing on it. The brawny man was brawny, but his face was pale and his brows were tightly knitted. The woman had a graceful figure, and her black hair was as smooth as a waterfall. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun. At this moment, the 3 of them had solemn gazes. When they saw the 4 words in front of the Courage God Mansion, their tense gazes relaxed a little, but they were still extremely solemn. Who are you looking for? The Courage God Mansion is refusing to see any guests. Please leave. Outside the Courage God Mansion, a guard came forward to inquire. Every day, there would be various forces from the imperial capital that came to seek an audience with the Courage God Mansion. Naturally, they wouldn't be able to fulfill their wishes. Chapter 475. I am Du Xiaoman, the big sister of the brave God King. Hurry and inform the brave God King that his second uncle and second brother are here. The woman said. Her eyes were as clear as water, but they were filled with worry. Since the 3 of you are the relatives of the brave God King, please follow me. I'll inform the brave God King now. The guard was stunned. The 3 of them did not seem to be joking. Looking at their hurried and worried faces, he did not dare to delay and led them into the brave God King's residence. After a while, Du Xiaoman, Du Yunlong, and Du Zhixiang were seated nervously in the main hall of the brave God King's residence. Ouyang Shuang, Du Xiaoqing, and Li Shui had already rushed over upon hearing the news. Sister Xiaoman, why are you here? Ouyang Shuang walked up. Seeing Du Xiaoman, she was elated. But looking at Du Xiaoman's serious face, she frowned. Where's third brother? Something happened at the Stone City's Du family. I need to see him immediately. Du Xiaoman squeezed out a smile and asked Ouyang Shuang. I've already sent someone to inform him. He's with the North vanquishing king right now. They should be here soon. Ouyang Shuang replied. Tisk. At practically the exact same moment that Ouyang Shuang finished speaking, the sound of air being torn apart resounded, and then Du Xiaofu's figure suddenly appeared within the hall. He carried a broad sword on his back, and his violet robe fluttered slightly. His clear eyes were suffused with a golden bright light, and his gaze instantly descended onto Du Zhixiang, Du Yunlong, and Du Xiaoman. Second uncle, big sister, second brother. When Du Xiaofu saw his second uncle Du Zhixiang's pale complexion, his gaze immediately darkened. Then, he saw that his second uncle, who used to be fierce and sturdy, had lost his left arm at the shoulder. His aura was weak, and his injuries were not light. Second uncle, you? At this moment, Du Xiaofu had a strong premonition in his heart. This premonition made Du Xiaofu's heart tremble. I've heard about you from your eldest sister and second brother. You're indeed your father's son. Good job. A smile appeared on Du Zhixiang's pale face. He stood up and walked forward, patting Du Xiaofu's shoulder with his single arm. With a faint smile in his eyes, he softly said, The Du family of the Du household took away the stone coffin that you often climbed into to sleep when you were young. That is the ancestral item of the Du family of Shur City. The elders of the Du family were incompetent and were unable to protect the ancestral item. This responsibility is now handed over to you. You must get it back. Second uncle, I already know about this matter. I will definitely get back the stone coffin in the ancestral shrine. Du Xiaofu nodded his head, his eyes filled with coldness. Third brother, first uncle was heavily injured by the people of the Du household. One of my father's arms was also severed by them. The Du household has gone too far. You must avenge our Shur City's Du family. Du Yunlong's eyes were scarlet red. Profound chi surged around his body, causing his cloud robe to flutter. How is first uncle? Hearing that his first uncle was heavily injured, Du Xiaofu immediately became anxious. He looked at everyone and hurriedly asked, "Third brother." Du Xiaoman opened her mouth. Her eyes were filled with worry and grief. She looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "My father was heavily injured by the people of the Du household. Right now, we don't know if he's dead or alive. Senior Thunder Lion is currently treating my father. His condition is extremely serious." Ding ding. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's body trembled. His eyes immediately became lifeless. The entire hall suddenly became absolutely silent. Numerous gazes fell on Du Xiaofu's body. An invisible aura seeped out of nowhere, causing the entire hall to tremble for no reason. "Brother." Du Xiaoqing stepped forward and gently shook Du Xiaofu's wrist. She was worried about her brother. "I'm fine." Du Xiaofu regained his senses. At this moment, his resolute face didn't reveal any anger. He only looked at his second uncle, Du Yunlong, and eldest sister, Du Xiaoman, and said, "Second uncle, eldest sister, second brother, don't worry. I will definitely seek justice for our Du family. No matter how much others owe us, I will definitely repay them in double. Second uncle knows that you're extraordinary now. You're already the brave god king of the Stone Dragon Empire. However, no matter what you do, you have to be careful. Pay attention to your own safety first. The Du household isn't easy to deal with. Your first uncle's condition is still unknown. We have to go back as soon as possible. The Lion King hopes that I can bring you back. He can only temporarily protect your first uncle, but he can't treat him." Du Zhixiang said to Du Xiaofu, "I understand. Second uncle, don't worry. After retrieving the sarcophagus, I will return to Stone City." Du Xiaofu nodded. Right now, nothing was more important than his first uncle. His expression slightly changed, then he squeezed out a smile at Ouyang Shuang and said, "Help me find Dark Wolf and Phantom. I have something to discuss with them. At the same time, help me send Grandfather Xia out of the mansion. Tell him that I will visit him another day. I have some urgent matters to attend to right now." Ouyang Shuang looked at Du Xiaofu, nodded, and left the hall. "Greetings, brave God King." A moment later, Dark Wolf and Phantom respectfully came over. "Dark Wolf, go to Chaotic Demon City in the Dark Forest for me. Go to a place called the World Assembly and find the Medicine King, Yi Wuming. Tell him that I invited him to Stone City to visit my first uncle. Answer whatever he asks. You don't have to hide anything from him." Du Xiaofu sternly instructed Dark Wolf. World Assembly, Medicine King, Yi Wuming. Hearing this name, Dark Wolf, Phantom, Du Yunlong, Du Xiaoman, and the others in the hall all had a drastic change in expression. The name of the Medicine King, Yi Wuming, shocked Dark Wolf even more. He immediately revealed a bitter smile to Du Xiaofu and said, "Brave God King, rumor has it that the Medicine King, Yi Wuming, has disappeared for decades. Furthermore, even if I can find him, I'm afraid that I won't be able to invite the legendary Medicine King, Yi Wuming." "Don't worry. Since it's my invitation, Medicine King, Yi Wuming, shouldn't reject it. Let's go now. Don't waste time on the way. The sooner, the better." After Du Xiaofu finished speaking to Dark Wolf, he turned to Li Shui and said, "Follow Dark Wolf to Chaotic Demon City. I don't know much about the World Assembly's situation there. I believe that you will be able to help." "Okay." Li Shui didn't say much and nodded her head slightly. When Du Yunlong heard Du Xiaofu's words, he was also puzzled. It seemed that Dark Wolf was curious about the World Assembly in Chaotic Demon City and his relationship with third brother wasn't simple. However, under such circumstances, he didn't ask too much. I'll leave the matters of the brave God King mansion to you. Dark Wolf bade farewell to Li Shui and left the hall after informing Phantom about the situation. Phantom, inform all the guards of the brave God King mansion to head to the Du mansion. I'll be there soon. Du Xiaofu said to Phantom. Yes. Phantom was a little puzzled. However, when he saw Du Xiaofu's expression, he immediately nodded his head and left the hall. Du Xiaofu, what are you planning to do? Are you going to deal with the Du mansion now? Du Zhixiang retracted his gaze from Dark Wolf and Phantom. He could feel that those two were martial marquee experts. However, they were extremely respectful in front of Du Xiaofu. In such a short time, the foolish young master in Stone City had become the brave god king of the Stone Dragon Empire. Even martial marquee experts had to obey his orders. It's not that. We're just going to take back what belongs to us. Du Xiaofu said to second uncle Du Zhixiang. Second uncle, come with me. After we take back what belongs to us, we'll return to Stone City. No one can take away what belongs to us. All right. Looking at Du Xiaofu's resolute gaze, Du Zhixiang nodded his head. Ever since the bloody battle in Stone City, he knew that this young man in front of him would one day lead the Du family to a new height. He would be able to protect the Du family. Me too. I want to go too. The Du mansion is too much of a bully. This time, I'll teach them a lesson. Du Xiaoqing had been in the hall the whole time. She had heard everything clearly. The Du mansion was bullying the Du family and her brother. This made her very angry. Her innocent eyes glowed with a green light. All right, let's go together. This is second brother and second uncle. They are my family. In the future, they will also be your family. Du Xiaofu smiled and introduced Du Xiaoqing to second uncle and second brother. Second uncle, second brother. Du Xiaoqing curiously looked at Du Zhixiang and Du Yunlong. Looking at the young girl in front of them, Du Zhixiang and Du Yunlong squeezed out a smile and nodded their heads. Although they were curious about Du Xiaoqing's background, they did not ask too much at this moment. North Vanquishing Prince and Sister Xie Fei have been sent away. What do you plan to do? Do you want me to go to the Ouyang mansion and ask my grandfather to step in? Ouyang Shuang returned to the hall and said to Du Xiaofu. With her understanding of Du Xiaofu and the fact that she had just returned, she could guess what Du Xiaofu wanted to do when she saw the Phantom Emperor gathering all the guards from the Courage God Mansion to the Du Mansion. No need. This is the Du family's matter. Let the Du family settle it themselves. Du Xiaofu knew that Ouyang Shuang meant well. After shaking his head slightly, he walked out of the hall. At this moment, Du Xiaofu wanted to go to the Du Mansion to seek justice. He wanted to take back what belonged to the Du family. Du Zhixiang, Du Yunlong, Du Xiaoman and the others looked at each other and followed. Outside the hall, Du Xiaofu stepped out and looked at the gradually rising sun in the sky. He turned his head and looked at his second uncle, whose face was deathly pale and who had lost an arm, following behind him. His expression turned solemn at this moment. A chilling aura began to surge out from his body, causing the surrounding space to change for no reason. There was a faint golden glow flickering in his eyes. At the same time, a faint golden glow began to spread around his body. Everyone in the Du Mansion, listen up. Today, if I, Du Xiaofu, do not flatten the Du Mansion, the heavens will not tolerate it. Today's update is complete. Chapter 476. His voice was like thunder, reaching the clouds and spreading across the entire imperial city. Boom! At this moment, the space in the sky trembled, and a golden light shot into the sky, carrying with it a sharp killing intent. The clouds in the sky changed color, and the world started to darken. Du Xiaofu's clear eyes looked up at the sky, and a golden light flashed. Du Xiaofu was enraged, completely enraged this time. The Du household was heartless, and Du Xiaofu was enraged for the entire Du family. He was enraged for his own family, and also for the entire Stone City Du family. The sound waves spread across the entire imperial city. The brave God King wants to deal with the Du household. What's going on? The brave God King already dealt with the Du household last time. Could it be that the Du household provoked the brave God King again this time? At this moment, countless eyes in the imperial city looked up, and their hearts were filled with shock. In the air, an ice demon eagle flapped its wings, and the north vanquishing prince and Xie Fei stood there. I don't know if telling him is a blessing or a curse. Feier, inform the disciples of the Xie household to head to the Du household. I also want to go there to take a look. I can't let him suffer. Hearing the sound waves, the north vanquishing prince's wrinkled face sighed. The Du family. In the golden dragon hall of the imperial palace, Emperor Chang stood with his hands behind his back, and his aura was imposing. In the Du household, Du Xiaofu's rolling sound waves swept across the sky, and everyone in the Du household could hear it clearly. Finally, a disaster has come. All the old, young, women, and children enter the secret chamber, quick. In the Du household, a burly man looked at the sky, his expression dim, and his eyes filled with sorrow. Is that branch family Du Xiaofu rebelling? How dare he say he wants to flatten the Du household? How dare he? He should be punished severely. Rebellion? It's really rebellion. A little branch family brat wants to flatten the Du household just because he's talented. How dare he? Set up the array. Prepare to activate all the array glyphs in the mansion. If he dares to come, then he won't be able to leave. That Du Xiaofu is also extraordinary. He's even more powerful than Juer. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for me to attack by force. Inside the Du household, there were many old people discussing and coming up with plans to suppress Du Xiaofu. Hiya! Iron hooves kicked up dust and the ground trembled. Outside the Du household, hundreds of horses galloped over. Outside the Du household, the facade that had been destroyed by Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoqing had already been repaired. It looked exactly the same, and there were no traces of its destruction. Who are you? Stop here, or else you'll be killed without mercy. Outside the Du household, there were trembling guards of the Du household. They were already worried when they heard the brave God King's loud roar. Now that they saw so many people approaching aggressively, they were instantly on alert. We'll wait here for the brave God King. Phantom raised his head and stopped his horse. He waved his hand and said to the guards of the brave God King's mansion behind him. He didn't have any intention to bother with the guards of the Du household. From the loud roar that reverberated throughout the imperial capital, Phantom already knew what the brave God King wanted to do. These guards of the brave God King's mansion were the absolute elites of the escort agency. Every one of them had experienced countless massacres and lived a life where blood was shed on the tip of the blade. They were all top-notch experts, and the sharp aura that they exuded wasn't something the guards of the Du household could compare to. These guards of the brave God King's mansion only obeyed the brave God King. Even though they were only the guards of the brave God King's mansion, they didn't put the other guards in their eyes, not even those of the Du household. After the Kingdom War, they were even more loyal to the brave God King's mansion. With the appearance of the hundreds of guards from the Courage Divine King's mansion, they knew the purpose of the Courage Divine King's visit. The bloody and fierce aura was not concealed at all as it instantly swept out, causing the guards outside the Du mansion to tremble in fear. Hurry up and inform the Du household. Those people seem to be from the brave God King's mansion. Outside the Du household, some of the guards recognized Phantom and the others. Their faces instantly changed, and sharp whistles could be heard. Who dares to be so presumptuous in the Du household? In a short period of time, the red doors of the Du household opened, and a large group of Du family disciples rushed out. Their auras surged and gathered together before they charged towards Phantom and the other guards of the brave God King's mansion. How dare you offend the Du household? How dare you? If you don't get lost, we'll kill you without mercy. Among the disciples of the Du household, someone shouted. Hundreds of people, and the number was still increasing, gathered together and surrounded Huan Ying and the others. Phantom's eyes were calm, but her expression was slightly gloomy. She didn't say a word as she gripped the long sword in her hand tightly. Mysterious aura surged around her, and the runes on the long sword moved. A sharp aura instantly spread out. Clang clang buzz. Buzz! In an instant, the hundreds of Courage God Manor's guards gripped their ice blades tightly as their auras surged. A sharp aura mixed with blood swept out as they pointed their weapons at the Du Manor's disciples, ready to start a massacre at any moment. The sharp aura mixed with the bloody aura obviously blocked the aura of the Du household disciples, causing them to tremble slightly. How dare the brave God King's mansion go against my Du household? You're courting death. But in just a short instant, experts of the Du household began to leap out from the gates of the Du household. They were all at the Pulse Spirit Realm and Martial Marquis Realm. Waves of powerful chi erupted from the periphery, appearing in front of the people of the Du household. When they landed, waves of terrifying chi pressured them, causing the phantom guards and other mounts to tremble in fear. Roar! Suddenly, a low roar of a tiger came from the distant sky. It was like the roar of a supreme beast. It could move mountains and rivers, suppress tens of thousands of beasts, and make one's soul tremble. Everyone immediately raised their heads and saw a huge black tiger flapping its wings. The black runes on its body were dazzling. Roar! The huge black tiger roared, and one could clearly see the sound waves cause the space to ripple. It was like a huge wave, and it shook the heavens and earth. Walala! The huge black tiger flapped its wings, and it brought along two huge black storms. With a flap, it appeared in the sky above the Du household. The huge black tiger was no less than 100 feet. Its body was terrifying, and it stood in the air with its claws. Its body was emitting dazzling black runes, and it was like a huge mountain that was suppressing others. It glared at them covetously, and its aura was surging, causing them to tremble in fear. At this moment, there were many figures standing on the back of the huge black tiger. The most eye-catching one was a purple-robed youth with a broadsword on his back. The purple-robed youth stood upright with a golden macaque on his shoulder. Beside him were three beautiful women. Their eyebrows were like swords, and their eyes were suffused with a golden glow. They were filled with dominance and sharpness. It's him. It's the brave God King, Du Xiaofu. It's Du Xiaofu. I heard that he came from a branch family of our Du household. He just said that he wants to flatten the Du household. Is this Du Xiaofu really here to flatten the Du household? Seeing the purple-robed youth on the terrifying huge black tiger, everyone from the Du household was afraid. Some of them even started to tremble. Some of them knew that the Du household had snatched a stone coffin from the Du family in the Stone City. The brave God King, Du Xiaofu, was probably here for revenge. That's right. That's the brave God King, Du Xiaofu. Is the brave God King really here to flatten the Du household? In front of the Du household's main gate, many spectators were rushing over. They stood far away and did not dare to approach. Greetings to the brave God King. Phantom led the Du household's guards and bowed respectfully. The Du household has gone too far. They are heartless. I give you 15 minutes to hand over the Du family's stone coffin, hand over everyone who went to the Du family in the Stone City, and hand over a Huangji pill. Otherwise, we will flatten the Du household and make them pay with their blood. On the back of the huge black tiger, Du Xiaofu raised his head and shouted. His voice reverberated throughout the Du household. In the main hall of the Du household, many old people's faces twitched when they heard the loud shouts outside. That brat is really here. Does he really dare to flatten the Du household and flatten the main family? It seems like he already knows about the Huangji pill. Who told him about it? Could it be Du Tingxian? Back then, his father, Du Tingxian, almost caused a huge disaster for the Du household. He still has the nerve to ask for the Huangji pill. How presumptuous. That brat is really here. We have to think of a way to deal with him. Perhaps we can find out the secret of our Du family's martial veins from him. Outside the Du household, Du Xiaofu dismounted from the huge black tiger and quietly waited outside the Du household. Du Zhixiang, Du Yunlong, and Du Xiaoman stood side by side, gazing at the vast and magnificent Du household. This was another clan of the Du household. It was rumored that this clan was incomparably powerful and could move unhindered in the empire. They had once thought of visiting this clan one day. Now that they were here, it was different from what they had imagined. The anticipation and yearning for this clan had already dissipated in the hearts of Du Zhixiang and the other two. What was left was only anger and pain. Outside the Du household, All the Du household disciples retreated. Facing the aura of the huge black tiger, they were simply unable to resist. They were even more afraid of the terrifying gaze of the purple-robed youth. 15 minutes is up. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu raised his head and began to walk towards the Du household. Du Xiaofu, what do you want to do? In front of the Du household disciples, a martial lord cultivator stared at Du Xiaofu and asked. But when his voice fell, he felt that his voice was trembling and his whole body was shivering. Chapter 477. Flatten the Du household. As Du Xiaofu spoke, his eyes glowed with a frightening golden light. Wherever his feet passed, the ground began to crack. The cracks spread out as a terrifying aura erupted. Not good. The brave God King is going to kill someone. The Du family disciples and guards all retreated in the face of the purple-robed youth, not daring to resist at all. Even their souls were trembling. During the Kingdom War, the brave God King Du Xiaofu fought the Tianhu Empire's human king Lu Kuan. That terrifying scene was still lingering in their hearts, and they were terrified. Stop right now. Inside the Du household, another person walked out from the vermilion door. It was an old man in his 70s. His gaze was fixed on Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's intimidating gaze moved slightly. He recognized this old man. He was the second elder of the Du household, known as the number one person below the martial king realm. He was famous throughout the entire empire, the existence closest to the martial king realm. He was the top expert of the Du household. Back then, he had fought with Du Shaoqing and suffered a great loss at the hands of Du Shaoqing. When the Du family disciples saw the second elder come out, they immediately crowded behind him. Seeing that the Du family disciples were so cowardly in front of Du Xiaofu, a hint of helplessness flashed through the second elder's eyes. Du Xiaofu stopped in his tracks, looked at the second elder and asked, "Did you bring out the thing I wanted?" The Du family protectors and elders are discussing in the main hall. "We can agree to your conditions. Come in with me to get it." The second elder said to Du Xiaofu, "Be careful, it might be a trap. I'll go with you." Ouyang Shuang and Du Xiaoman were both worried. They stepped forward to accompany Du Xiaofu into the Du household. "Brother, I'll go in with you." Du Shaoqing stepped forward, wanting to enter the Du household with her brother. "You can go in alone. This is also a matter of the Du family. Those unrelated to the Du family shouldn't come in." The second elder looked at Ouyang Shuang and the others. He was especially wary of Du Shaoqing. "It's fine. You all wait for me here. I'll go in alone." Du Xiaofu waved his hand, then turned back to look at the Phantom clan and said, "If anyone dares to act rashly, kill them all." "Yes." Everyone from Phantom Shadow nodded and gripped their weapons tightly. Their Xian Qi surged and a bloody aura spread out. Jia, the ground and the streets. Demonic beasts and demonic beasts. Demonic beasts and demonic beasts as mounts and demonic beasts. And armor and figures emitting a powerful aura. Xie families, Du Xie, and said Xie, S, Shi, Xie, S, Xie, Li, Xie, Xie to say and tube. Xie, thank you. Du Xiaofu nodded. Just that when the second elder of the Du household saw the people of the Xie household coming, his face secretly became a little embarrassed. Soon after, Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao, whose pale golden spirit eyes moved slightly on his shoulder, entered the Du palace together. Everyone waited outside. "I can't help but feel uneasy. Could there be a trap here?" On Du Zhixiong's pale face, there was a hint of worry in his eyes. He was faintly feeling uneasy. "Second uncle, don't worry. Xiaofu can protect himself." Du Xiaoman comforted her second uncle Du Zhixiong. But at this moment, her beautiful eyes were also slightly serious. Following the second elder, Du Xiaofu passed through the Du household. Inside the magnificent and spacious Du household, it was completely silent. There was not a single person. After a moment, Du Xiaofu stepped into the Du household's huge and solemn ancient main hall. His gaze swept across the hall. There were close to 100 elders and experts of the Du family. Seeing Du Xiaofu's arrival, the elders and experts of the Du family suddenly trembled. Their gazes fell on Du Xiaofu. Some were angry, some were sneering, some were wary, and some were fearful. At the head of the main hall, there was an old man who looked to be in his 80s sitting upright. His sideburns were white. His appearance was old, but his aura was not angry. His gaze was frightening. Du Xiaofu raised his head. He was a little surprised that he did not see the Protector King. But at this moment, the aura of this old man was extremely powerful. It shook one's soul. He was actually a peak Great Circle Spirit Talisman Master. This is the Great Elder, Du Xiaofu. Hurry up and pay your respects to the Great Elder. Inside the main hall, someone lightly shouted at Du Xiaofu, indicating that Du Xiaofu should pay his respects to the Great Elder. That was an expert of the Du household, a peak Great Circle Spirit Talisman Master. He was second to none in the entire Stone Dragon Empire. He was the absolute expert of the Du household. What does your Great Elder have to do with me? Have you prepared the things I want? Du Xiaofu lightly shouted. His gaze swept across the people of the Du household in the main hall. His expression was frightening. Good one, Du Xiaofu. As a branch family's descendant, you actually dared to trample the main family. This is treason and heresy. According to the family's rules, you should be killed. Du Xiaofu, since this is your first offense and your talent is outstanding, as long as you are willing to hand over the secrets of the martial veins in your body, we will be lenient with your punishment. In the future, as long as you wholeheartedly serve the Du family will nurture you well. We will give you the opportunity to step out of the empire and set foot in the central region. In the future, one day, you will stand above the central region. Du Xiaofu, obediently surrender and hand over the secrets in your body. Otherwise, you will be punished according to the family's rules. Suddenly, inside the main hall, an old man loudly shouted. He seemed to be confident that he would no longer be afraid of Du Xiaofu. Hearing this, Du Xiaoyao, who was on Du Xiaofu's shoulder, moved her eyes. Her pale golden spirit pupils fluctuated, and her gaze swept across the people in the main hall. Ha ha! Du Xiaofu laughed loudly. His laughter shook the entire main hall. Everyone could hear the surging anger in his laughter. It was like a suppressed volcano that could erupt at any time. Du Xiaofu, what are you laughing at? In the main hall, an old man's eyebrows twitched as he looked at Du Xiaofu and asked. Du Xiaofu's laughter came to an abrupt end. Two golden rays of light shot out from his eyes as he looked directly at the group of people in the main hall. The aura around his body spread out. Under the terrifying aura, the group of people in the main hall felt that facing Du Xiaofu was like facing a terrifying demonic beast that was eyeing them covetously. The fierce and domineering aura permeated the air and swept through the main hall, causing their hearts to tremble for no reason. I'm laughing at you for overestimating yourselves. I'm laughing at you for thinking too highly of yourselves. I'm laughing at you for being a group of frogs in a well and looking at the sky. Du Xiaofu coldly shouted. His master, the revered equipment master, was already a top expert in the Central Plains. From the teachings of his master, Du Xiaofu had already opened up a huge and embryonic view of the world. How could the words of this group of people from the Du family enter Du Xiaofu's ears? Moreover, at this time, there was only anger in Du Xiaofu's heart. Du Xiaofu, you are presumptuous. How dare you disregard your elders? This is a serious crime. Didn't the Stone City's Du family teach you the rules? As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, many old men looked at each other with embarrassed expressions. An old man couldn't help but shout, lightning flashing in his eyes. Old man, what qualifications do you have to mention the Stone City's Du family and my Du family's elders? Who do you think you are? Du Xiaofu was furious. Suddenly, two golden lights flashed in his eyes as he looked directly at the old man. A domineering and terrifying aura was released. His shout was like thunder, deafening and rolling, reverberating in the main hall. Ding ding, as Du Xiaofu's shout fell, the old man's body suddenly staggered back. Under the spread of Du Xiaofu's terrifying aura, his mind suddenly seemed to have been hit by a heavy blow. Then, he sat down on the ground. He was so scared that his old face suddenly turned pale. His eyes became dull, and his body trembled violently. Oh my God! Many people in the main hall were shocked and trembling. No one thought that an elder would be scolded by Du Xiaofu to sit down on the ground with just a few words. Each and every one of them suddenly felt their hair stand on end and their hearts tremble. Du Xiaofu, what are you doing? No matter what, everyone here is your elder. Such disrespect is enough to punish you. The first elder opened his mouth. His voice was deep and old. Accompanied by his soul mental energy, it rolled towards Du Xiaofu. It was as if he wanted to give Du Xiaofu a show of strength. He wanted to kill Du Xiaofu's spirit and prestige, and also test Du Xiaofu's strength. As the soul mental energy swept over, Du Xiaofu's Niwen Palace's mental energy surged and directly resisted. He looked at the first elder with a frightening gaze. Killing intent began to spread around his body as he said in a deep voice, "You are old, but not my elders. Old people who don't die are thieves. You are just a group of old thieves, a group of old thieves. So what if I kill you today?" Impudent, audacious junior, speaking such arrogant words, you should be suppressed and killed. The first elder stood up with an extremely ugly expression. However, at this moment, he was secretly shocked. He didn't know why, but when facing this junior, Du Xiaofu, he felt a faint uneasiness in his heart. That uneasiness even intensified, and then he began to tremble with fear. "Ha ha!" Du Xiaofu laughed again. His voice was full of anger. The Du family had gone too far. They had bullied his father, bullied his family, and now bullied the Stone City's Du family. They had crippled his second uncle's arm. His eldest uncle's life and death were unknown, and they had destroyed the Du family's ancestral hall. All of this, how could Du Xiaofu not be angry? The Stone City's Du family and the Du family were of the same bloodline. Thousands of years ago, they were one family. But in these thousands of years, after who knows how many generations, this last trace of bloodline that couldn't be any thinner was completely destroyed by the anger in Du Xiaofu's heart. "A bunch of old thieves. I'll ask you one last time. What I want, are you going to return or not? Are you going to hand it over or not?" The laughter came to an abrupt end. Du Xiaofu's golden eyes swept across the great hall. His voice was monstrous, shaking the great hall until it cracked and the ground shook. Inside the great hall, each and every Du family expert suddenly trembled in fear and continuously retreated. Treacherous brat, he should be suppressed and killed. This kid must not be allowed to live. The first elder shouted. His figure flashed and suddenly appeared at the side door. At this moment, all the Du family experts and elders had retreated to the entrance of the great hall, each and every one of them revealing a cold smile. "This group of old thieves has already set up a great formation to deal with you." Du Xiaoyao glanced indifferently at the surroundings of the large hall. At this moment, there were quite a number of stone pillars, beams, and even the ground within the large hall. They were faintly connected and communicated with the energy of the world. "Haha, what a group of old thieves, really shameless. They deceived me into entering the great hall and set up a great formation. Not only did they bully my Stone City Du family, they also bullied my family. Now they want to kill me?" Du Xiaofu angrily laughed, his eyes trembling with the color of blood. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was heartbroken, as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Heartbroken that his drunkard father was deceived by the Du family. Heartbroken that the Stone City Du family had always regarded the Du household as a family, and even the main family. But now, they had met with such a fate. Pain, Du Xiaofu's heart was pierced, as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Anger, Du Xiaofu's anger overflowed to the heavens, uncontrollable. "I'll ask you one last time. Will you hand over the Marshall Vane secret and submit to the main family, or else you will be suppressed and killed here?" The first elder shouted, his eyes looking at Du Xiaofu as he finally asked, "If you don't hand it over, you will be suppressed and killed to eliminate future troubles." The old man of the Du family sneered, his eyes flashing with lightning. For countless years, the Du household had stood tall in the empire and had long been built into a fortress. Even if a peak martial king entered the Du household, he would definitely not be able to leave and would be suppressed and killed inside. Although Du Xiaofu was extraordinary, he was currently in the Du household. How could the old men of the Du family be afraid and sit and wait for the rebellious brat to be suppressed and killed? Today, the Du household will be trampled to the ground. Du Xiaofu raised his head and shouted, his voice rumbling and spreading, shaking the great hall. Unfortunately, the Du family had already set up a formation around the area. The commotion inside could not be heard by Du Xiaoqing and the others outside. One big chapter, asking for fresh flowers, recommendations, coffee. I haven't exploded in a few days. Let's explode tomorrow. Everyone, just give me some fresh flowers. 462 now. 500 will do. Xiaoyu continues to write. Chapter 478. Du Xiaofu's shocking roar resounded in the hearts of all the Du family practitioners. Every single one of them trembled in fear, and it was not difficult to detect a bone-chilling coldness. Activate the king-subduing formation. Kill that treacherous brat. Activate the formation. Kill that brat and prevent future troubles. We must not let him escape, or else he will be a great threat to our Du household. Outside the main hall, some of the Du household elders shouted out in shock, and immediately, some of them joined forces to activate the formation. Rumble. At this moment, the floor, beams, and stone pillars within the large hall had mysterious talisman runes flickering on them. Waves of aura suddenly surged. Soon after, the large array was activated, and waves of vast aura instantly erupted. Rumble. The entire hall shook, the earth quaked, and the mountains swayed. There was an explosion of light, and the space around the hall was distorted. The energy gathered, and it shook people's souls, making them tremble in fear. A terrifying killing array suddenly covered the hall. Murderous intent surged, suppressing everything. It was unstoppable. This brat is dead for sure. He's dead for sure. All the Du household elders and practitioners retreated, and all of them heaved a sigh of relief as they watched the activated king-subduing formation. The king-subduing formation was the strongest killing formation in the Du household. It was the ultimate killing formation left behind by generations of Du household practitioners over thousands of years. It was rumored that even king-level practitioners could be killed by it. Now that Du Xiaofu was suppressed by the formation, he was definitely dead for sure. First elder, second elder, there are still some troublemakers outside. The Xia household people are also among them. How should we deal with them? Someone from the Du household asked the first and second elders. At this moment, in everyone's eyes, no matter how extraordinary Du Xiaofu was, he would only die in the king-subduing formation. There was no chance for him to survive. The people from Duke Xie's residence advised them to retreat. Du Xiaofu is already dead. Can Duke Xie's residence really contend against my Duke Du's residence? As for the other small fries, just kill them. The great elder of Duke Du's residence coldly said, "Haha, what a good it's fine to kill. What a good old thief." Suddenly, Du Xiaofu's roar came from the palace that was enveloped by the great array of suppressing kings. His voice spread out, and then golden light spread out from the distorted great array of suppressing kings. Golden light enveloped the area. The dazzling golden light was like a blazing sun exploding, causing the entire space to distort. The terrifying aura gave people an incomparable sense of pressure. After that, two silhouettes walked out from the distorting grand formation. Two figures, one big and one small, erupted with a terrifying aura, as if a terrifying lord had been born. It turned out to be a huge, sparkling, and translucent ape. Mysterious runes surged all over its body, causing the surrounding space to ripple violently. Oh! The ape roared. Its entire body was covered with golden, mysterious runes. Its sparkling and translucent body was wrapped in multicolored light. Its eyes were lively, as if it was born with spiritual eyes, overlooking everything in the world, including the people of the Du household. The small figure was Du Xiaofu. He walked out with his tall and straight body. His face was firm and his eyes were frightening. At this moment, his body was wrapped in rolling golden light, as if he wanted to drown the surrounding space in the golden light. How can this be? How did Du Xiaofu come out? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. How can the great array of suppressing kings be ineffective against Du Xiaofu? Outside the palace, the people of the Du household were shocked. Everyone's hearts were filled with fear. That was the strongest great array of suppressing kings of the Du family. Even martial kings could be killed by it. How could Du Xiaofu come out unscathed? That terrifying great array of suppressing kings was actually unable to have any effect on Du Xiaofu. This was too inconceivable. It was hard to believe. Their gazes were trembling, as if they had seen a ghost. Old bastard, you want to rely on the great array to kill me? You won't be able to do as you wish. Du Xiaofu shouted. His footsteps crossed the space. Suddenly, the ground cracked, the earth shook, and a terrifying aura erupted. Step by step, he walked towards the group of people of the Du household. Not good. The great array can't trap this bastard. All the experts of the Du household panicked. Seeing that the situation was not good, their hearts trembled and they retreated one after another, not daring to approach. Don't tell me you old bastards have so little courage. Didn't you want to kill me? Why do you only know how to run now? Du Xiaofu laughed coldly. Step by step, his eyes were suffused with golden light. A terrifying aura spread out, like a peerless beast, scaring the elders and experts of the Du household into retreating. Impudent, today I represent the ancestors of the Du family to capture you. Do you still dare to rebel? If you dare to commit treason, you will be punished by the heavens. An old man who looked to be in his 60s, the one who had been urging Du Xiaofu to kill him, mustered up his courage and walked out. Lightning flashed in his eyes. He waved his hand, and a talisman claw imprint appeared. Accompanied by a flash of lightning, he directly tried to capture Du Xiaofu. He did not believe that Du Xiaofu would really dare to deal with him. Dealing with an elder, treason, he will be punished by the heavens. Heartless, old but not dead, despicable and shameless, you will be punished today. Du Xiaofu shouted, shaking the space. He directly waved his hand and a fist imprint suddenly blasted out, directly colliding with the claw imprint of the old man. Boom! Under the impact of the fist, a muffled sound rang out. The old man was immediately sent flying as if he was struck by lightning. Then, he spat out a large mouthful of blood. His old eyes were filled with shock, and he directly crashed into a hard stone wall not far away. Bang bang! The old man's body crashed into the stone wall, causing it to crack. Then, he powerlessly closed his eyes and did not even let out a scream. Dead. The third protector is dead. An expert of the Du family immediately went forward to support the old man who was sent flying, only to find that the old man's vitality had been shattered by a single punch. His internal organs and spirit gate had all exploded. Brat, how dare you? The great elder could not bear it any longer. His old face was filled with anger. He formed a hand imprint, and his aura fluctuated. He began to arrange a talisman array to suppress Du Xiaofu. Am I bold, or are you bullying me for being a coward? Du Xiaofu sneered, his body directly pouncing towards the great elder. Quick, join forces to suppress this bastard. Let the great elder arrange a talisman array. An expert of the Du family shouted. Then, many old men and experts moved together. Their auras surged and terrifying auras erupted, causing the entire space to tremble. Faint dark clouds hovered in the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Their auras suppressed the sky and shook the mountains and rivers. Old man, you're bullying me, Du Xiaofu shouted in a low voice. The talisman wings on his back instantly extended out like a rock descending from the heavens. Every move he made was overbearing and terrifying. With a flap of his wings, he swept out forcefully. His movements were grand, overbearing, fierce, and domineering. His aura swept through the sky and suppressed everything as easily as crushing dry weeds. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Such a collision was like thunder in the sky. A series of talisman lights burst out. Talisman energy violently shot out, causing the surrounding heaven and earth to tremble. Du Xiaofu was enraged. His aura was awe-inspiring. He began a massacre, no longer holding back. The grief in his heart, the anger in his heart, must be cleansed with the blood and souls of the Du family. Poochie, Poochie. Suddenly, figures of the Du family were directly sent flying. all of them vomiting blood. They did not have the strength to resist and were directly sent flying. A large number of figures had their vitality suppressed on the spot. Their bodies were shattered. They were simply not a match for Yishiwen. Swish! Du Xiaofu's figure drifted like a deity, unfathomable. Soon after, he appeared in front of the first elder who was condensing formation flags and was about to arrange a talisman array. His speed was as fast as lightning. His aura was silent and tyrannical, causing the first elder's eyes to be filled with fear. His old face was filled with disbelief and shock. "Kid, you're courting death." After a brief moment of shock, the great elder of the Du household, who was at the peak of the perfect 5-star spirit talisman master, coldly shouted. He waved his hand, and a mighty palm print directly shot towards Du Xiaofu. Bang! The palm print was like thunder. It immediately bombarded Du Xiaofu's body, causing the first elder to feel proud. How can he be so strong? How can this be? However, the first elder of the Du family's expression greatly changed. His palm had only shaken Du Xiaofu's body. "Old man, I originally wanted to wait for you to arrange the talisman array. Who knew that you would be so slow? I can't wait for you." Du Xiaofu sneered. Almost at the same time, a fist wrapped in golden runes viciously hammered into the body of the first elder of the Du family. Swish! Soon after, everyone saw the old body of the first elder of the Du family directly fly out, before heavily smashing into the outer wall of a courtyard. Poochie! The instant his old body landed, blood spurted out from his mouth. That tyrannical and terrifying force had directly caused the old body to explode like a bomb, creating a deep hole in the ground of the courtyard. Cracks spread out in all directions, extending into the distance. "Damn it, quickly ask the patriarch to come out. Ask the old patriarch to come out, quickly." The second elder's eyes were filled with shock, his gaze violently trembling. As his voice faded, his hand seals formed. Lightning runes suddenly erupted between his hands. Silver snakes flickered, and a lightning palm print immediately condensed. The old figure flashed like a ghost, suddenly launching a sneak attack towards Du Xiaofu. "You old man, you're too shameless." Du Xiaoyao's golden ape figure appeared in front of the second elder. Suddenly, a fist blasted out. A hazy brilliance erupted, as if the beginning of the world. An indescribable pressure, as if it wanted to burst one's soul, caused the space in front of the fist to blur and distort, as if it could push in all directions and suppress everything. Today's update is complete. Chapter 479. This punch caused the bodies of the surrounding Du family experts to tremble and their souls to throb. Bang bang! In the blink of an eye, such a collision erupted and the sound waves were ear-splitting. Golden runes spread across the sky, and the terrifying energy caused many people's pupils to shrink. The vast and mighty energy swept across the sky like a flood. Thud, thud. Under such a punch, the lightning in the eyes of the Du family's second elder shrank, and he was suddenly pushed back. Thud. However, at this moment, Du Xiaoyao's redbone horse monkey body also staggered back a few steps. However, compared to the Du family's second elder, her situation was clearly much better. Rumble. In the surrounding space, under the influence of the golden runes activated by Du Xiaoyao, the rune formation that sealed the space could no longer be maintained and kept exploding in the air. When the rune formation was destroyed, everything in the Du household appeared and could no longer be hidden from the outside world. "Come out." Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in the air above the messy rubble. With a wave of his hand, a golden suction force gushed out from his palm and immediately grabbed the Du household's first elder, whose aura was weak and blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, like an eagle grabbing a chick. At this moment, an astonishing aura rippled out from the surroundings of the Du household. Countless gazes gathered and saw that after a series of explosions in the depths of the Du household, a purple-robed youth stood in the air, carrying an old and battered old man in his hand. It's the Courage God King Du Xiaofu who just entered. What happened inside? The Courage God King is carrying the Du household's first elder, a peak-perfect 5-star spirit talisman master. Someone shockingly recognized that the person being held in Du Xiaofu's hand right now was the head elder of the Du household. He was an illustrious 5-star peak spirit talisman master who was renowned throughout the empire and was also a talisman master. Its brother. Du Xiaoqing looked at the sky in front of her, her eyes rippling. There's a huge commotion inside. There's indeed an ambush. The gazes of Du Zhixiong and the others were solemn as they stared intently at the sky in front of them. Brat, what do you want to do? If you dare to kill me, the Du household will definitely not let you off. A branch family actually dares to attack a member of the main family. This is treason. At this moment, the first elder, who was being held captive by Du Xiaofu, was in a state of panic and shock. There was fear in his eyes. Du Xiaofu did not pay any attention to the captured great elder of the Du household. His eyes swept around the Du household as he shouted, "Everyone of the Du household, listen up. Thousands of years ago, the Du family was divided into two. One branch left the ancestral land, while the other stayed in the ancestral land's stone city. Since ancient times, those who stayed in the ancestral land were the orthodox main family. Your branch of the family claimed to be the main family of the Du household. This is one of your sins. A branch clan member has trespassed into the main clan, killed the bloodline, injured the clansmen, disturbed the ancestral shrine, disrespected the ancestors, and plundered the items left behind by the ancestors. This is the second great crime. The Du household is heartless, unrighteous, despicable, and shameless. This is the third crime. The Du household is a group of old thieves, deceiving me, ambushing and killing. This is the fourth crime. For crimes are punished together. According to the rules of the Du household stone city, heartless, unrighteous, treacherous, killing the bloodline, injuring the clansmen, disrespecting the ancestors, this is intolerable by the heavens. You are to be killed on the spot." Du Xiaofu's roaring voice came out from his mouth. Each and every crime was pointed at the people of the Du household. His voice was like thunder, resounding throughout the imperial capital Dragon City. "Old man, you claim to be the main clan of the Du family, but don't forget, the Stone City is the ancestral land of the Du family. Those who live in the ancestral land are the main clan since ancient times. You are the branch clan members. You offended the main clan and disrespected the ancestors of the Du family. Today, I will punish you on behalf of the ancestors of the Du family." Du Xiaofu lowered his head and looked directly at the first elder, who was holding the seal in his hand. His eyes were filled with coldness. This old man wanted to kill him, so how could he let him go? With a wave of his hand, the first elder, who was holding the seal, was ruthlessly thrown into the Du household's main hall, which was currently enveloped by the King's suppression array, like a stone. Dazzling symbols, a terrifying aura soared into the sky. The energy distorted the space, and within the oppressive Du household's main hall, the first elder's blood-curdling screams immediately rang out. The energy exploded, causing the space to distort endlessly as it suppressed this part of the world. The King's suppression array was rumored to be able to suppress and kill even a martial king. Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao's appearance did not affect the King's suppression array at all, as they silently exited the array. An ordinary array was completely ineffective against Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao. It was enough for them to treat it as nothing. At this moment, the first elder, who was holding the seal, was thrown into the King's suppression array by Du Xiaofu. His fate was obvious. He would be killed instantly. "Brave God household, listen to my orders. Spare the old, weak, women and children. Flatten the Du household." In midair, Du Xiaofu's loud roar rang out. The Du household's betrayal and disloyalty had completely infuriated Du Xiaofu's killing intent. Roar. The giant black tiger circling in midair was the first to move. The tiger's roar shook the heavens as it pounced on its prey. Poochie Poochie, under the black rune storm, there were already over 1,000 people gathered outside the Du household. Instantly, over 100 of them were thrown to the ground. Many of them vomited blood and were sent flying. A large gale of energy swept out, shaking the surrounding streets until they were on the verge of collapsing. Swish, the giant black tiger flapped its wings and waved its tiger claws. The mysterious runes on the talisman fluctuated and emitted a domineering pale golden light, following which several Du household disciples were directly torn into pieces by its claws. Their flesh and blood were badly mangled, and finally, they crumbled into pieces. The demonic tiger is terrifying. Quickly retreat. The Du family disciples outside the Du household were instantly shocked and fearful as they retreated one after another. Quickly joined forces to deal with that demonic tiger. A Du household martial lord expert shouted as he began to organize the experts to join forces to besiege the king's scaled demonic tiger. Humph! Du Shaoqing shouted as her graceful figure flashed out. She waved her hand and slapped down. The mysterious runes on the green runes surged. Instantly, several Du household martial lord experts did not even have time to react before they were smashed into pieces by Du Shaoqing. Their blood splattered across the square. Huff huff. When they saw Du Shaoqing's attack, a few martial marquee experts were actually easily killed. When this scene landed in the eyes of Du Zhixiong and Du Yunlong, it was not an ordinary kind of shock. They gasped and were flabbergasted. They could not believe it. Flatten the Du household. Wanning shouted as her profound chi erupted. She led the Courage Divine King household guards and charged out. Flatten the Du household. Instantly, the smell of blood swept across the square. Runes exploded and weapons were unsheathed. The killing aura swept across the square, causing everyone to tremble in fear. The Du household has indeed set up an ambush. This is too much. Do they think that my Stone City's Du family has no one? Du Yunlong regained his senses. His cloud robe fluttered as he gripped the 7-foot-long war blade, Thousand Kill, in his hand. He infused his profound chi and dazzling runes bloomed. Wong. The war blade seemed to have come to life in an instant as it emitted a thunderous sound. A terrifying aura spread out, and the runes were incomparably sharp. Du Yunlong dashed out and followed the Courage Divine King household guards. The Stone City's Du family shall not be bullied. Du Xiaoman shouted as her beautiful figure dashed out. With her treasured sword in hand, the sword radiance wreaked havoc. A chilling aura spread out from her eyes as she dashed out. Du Xiaofu killed someone. Run. Du Xiaofu is treacherous. He killed someone. Quickly ask the old patriarch and patriarch to come out of seclusion and kill Du Xiaofu. The entire Du household was shocked. All the experts retreated as they looked at the purple-robed young man in midair. Perhaps no one in the Du household expected that Du Xiaofu would really dare to kill someone. After all, the last time when Du Xiaofu wreaked havoc in the Du household, he did not really kill anyone. But this time, not only did Du Xiaofu kill someone, he even killed the great elder of the Du household. The Du family of the Du household had become a branch family in the mouth of Du Xiaofu. The Du family of the Stone City had always lived in the ancestral land. Since ancient times, they had been the main family of the Du household. The main family was naturally in the ancestral land. The Du household had always regarded themselves as the main family of the Du family, but they could not deny that they came from the Du family of the Stone City. It was just that they had always thought of themselves as the main family. Now that they were said to be a branch family, they could not accept it for a while. A bunch of old thieves. Are you worthy of being the main family of the Du family? You really have no shame. Today, I will give you a taste of your own medicine. Du Xiaofu shouted, his figure swooping down, rushing into the group of experts and elders of the Du family who were fleeing. His target was the person who was the most arrogant. The runic wings on his back flapped, and a golden light erupted. His aura was like a giant pong descending. In an instant, he captured several experts of the Du family and threw them into the king-suppressing array in the main hall. Suddenly, the king-suppressing array fluctuated, and a killing aura swept across the sky, accompanied by a series of screams. Quickly close the king-suppressing array, quickly. An old man of the Du family shouted in a trembling voice. His eyes were filled with fear, and his whole body was trembling. You should go too. Before the old man's voice fell, he was directly restrained by Du Xiaofu and was thrown into the king-suppressing array along with several other members of the Du family. Then, miserable screams rang out. Is this our own doing? Some of the experts of the Du family were shocked. They watched as the experts of the Du household were killed by the king-suppressing array they had arranged. Their auras were weak, and their hearts were filled with grief. Quickly ask the patriarch and old patriarch to come out of seclusion. Quickly. Some of the Du family members were trembling. Even their souls were trembling. That Du Xiaofu was too terrifying. The young lady and the black tiger outside the Du family also made them tremble in fear. Each and every one of the Du family members did not have the strength to resist. Everyone quickly joined forces to form the king-suppressing array to kill Du Xiaofu. Chapter 480. Translator. H2DH2, Mr. An old man from the Du household let out a shrill cry. Dozens of figures gathered and moved in unison. Waves of lightning aura surged as they formed a large formation to kill Du Xiaofu. Tiger roar. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu let out a loud cry. Strange runes spread out from his body and formed a formation in the air in front of him. Finally, they condensed into the head of a ferocious giant tiger that was over 100 zhang tall. It was as if the sun was suppressing the heavens and earth. It was incomparably ferocious, as if a divine tiger was looking down on the earth from the sky. Roar! An astonishing tiger roar rang out. Its fangs pierced through the air. The tiger's roar reverberated through the air. This was the ultimate move of the howling sky demon tiger, the tiger roar that Du Xiaofu had comprehended in the 5 years he had spent in the heavenly martial talisman realm. Even Lu Kuan did not use it in the previous battle. Although its power was not as strong as the sky-shaking wings, it was even more terrifying in this kind of encirclement. Puchi, Puchi. Indeed, following Du Xiaofu's astonishing tiger roar, the dozens of old men and experts from the Du household who had surrounded Du Xiaofu were all sent flying. Blood spurted from their mouths. What a terrifying brave god king. A single roar was able to heavily injure dozens of experts from the Du household. From the brave god king's tone, it seems like the Du household has gone too far. Just now, the second elder of the Du household brought the brave god king into the Du household. So it turns out that he was lying to the brave god king. He wanted to use a formation to kill him inside. How shameless. I didn't expect the Du household to be so shameless. Is this still the Du household that has protected the empire for thousands of years? Outside the Du household, countless onlookers exclaimed in surprise. Their gazes were all focused on the situation inside the Du household. From the brave god king's loud roar, it was not difficult to understand the general situation. You old bastards aren't qualified to kill me. Flapping his wings, Du Xiaofu soared into the sky. Golden light burst out from his body as he locked onto the Du family members with his psychic power. A punch blasted out, sending a burly man flying into a courtyard. A large area of ground and buildings were turned into dust. That burly man was definitely not going to survive. Old thief, how dare you bully me? Kill. An old man at the martial marquee profound level fled. Earlier, he had been clamoring to kill Du Xiaofu, but now, he was captured by Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu viciously clenched his fist, causing space to distort. Then, the old man's pupils contracted. His expression was one of shock and terror as he was directly reduced to a bloody mist. Today, we will flatten the Du household. Du Xiaofu was incomparably furious. The Du household had repeatedly bullied the Stone City's Du family and his family. This time, they even wanted to trick him into entering the Du household's main hall to kill them. How could he not be furious? This Du family was said to be of the same lineage, but they were even more vicious and merciless than their enemies. They even made Du Xiaofu bitterly disappointed. How could he not go on a killing spree? Rumble like a giant rock spreading its wings. A large area of the palace and courtyard collapsed. The ground cracked, and the miserable cries of the Du family members could be heard. At this moment, Du Xiaofu could imagine that when the Du household betrayed them, they probably felt the same unspeakable pain as him. Drunkard father, mother, sister. The debt that the Du household owed us, I will take it back now. Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with tears. He did not stop attacking, destroying and killing everything. rumble. Wherever Du Xiaofu passed, the courtyards, the fake mountains, the ground, and the pavilions all collapsed. The cracks on the ground continued to spread. Going on a killing spree, there was no longer any mercy to speak of. At this time, Du Xiaofu was going on a killing spree. Old bastard, you betrayed my family, betrayed the Stone City's Du family, Buzz. The more Du Xiaofu killed, the more sorrowful he felt. The more furious he became. The green gold light in his hand exploded, and the tyrannical shadow also appeared in his hand. The green gold light scattered, the runes flowed, and the tyrannical shadow seemed to be formed by nature. The energy of heaven and earth suddenly surged and gathered, and a tyrannical and fierce aura filled the air. Whoosh! The green gold light shone brightly. Du Xiaofu swung his sword, and directly chopped the Du family expert into pieces. He was unstoppable. Chi-la-la layers of light bloomed on top of the tyrannical shadow, and the sword body turned into layers of green gold sword whips that were like the golden feathers of a golden rock. They seemed to be formed by nature and were closely linked together. Like a spiritual python that attacked, a dragon that soared into the sky, it also pierced through the chests of several Du household experts that were fleeing in different directions at an unbelievable angle, killing them within. Starting a massacre, suppressing everything. No, don't kill. Some Du family experts trembled, their eyes filled with fear. At this moment, they were completely intimidated. In such a huge Du household, there were as many experts as there were clouds, but at this moment, there was no one who could stop Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu, for you to kill like this, for such treason, you will definitely suffer the wrath of the heavens. The second elder's body floated low in the air, watching the bloody scene in the Du household. A large number of Du family experts and Du family disciples were being massacred. His eyes were blood red, and his heart was filled with grief. The ones who bullied Stone City's Du family are all of you. The ones who bullied my family are all of you, and this time, the ones who wanted to kill me are also all of you. You bunch of old bastards have reversed yin and yang. This is the true treason. The wrath of the heavens is too late. I will definitely kill you today. Du Xiaofu appeared in front of the second elder. His eyes were blood red, and his killing intent was soaring. His terrifying aura was like that of a peerless beast, causing the second elder's body to tremble, and his soul to suddenly throb with unease. Kill. Du Xiaofu swung his sword. It was a simple sword, but at this moment, it was enough to shake mountains and rivers, destroying everything. A deep trench appeared on the ground below, and cracks appeared one after another. It was as if an earthquake had occurred, shocking people's souls. Chi. The second elder's expression changed greatly, and he quickly retreated, but this time, it was too late. Don't. The second elder was terrified. He realized that he was wrong. He did not dare to anger Du Xiaofu. He should not have thought that Du Xiaofu would not dare to really kill. In a short moment, where the sword light passed, one of the second elder's arms was directly destroyed. His panic Xian Qi talisman defense was immediately cut off, and he immediately opened his mouth to scream, blood dripping. The second elder's eyes were filled with fear. At this moment, he truly realized that in front of Du Xiaofu, he actually had no power to resist. He was at the peak of the complete martial lord realm, and was known as the #1 person below the martial king realm. He could break through and become a king at any time, but he did not expect that in front of Du Xiaofu, he would be in such a sorry state. You bunch of old bastards are not qualified to kill me. Du Xiaofu rushed out again, the hair behind his back fluttering. He swung his sword down, and the second elder's other arm was directly cut off, dripping with blood. His voice was mournful, and his old face was distorted, extremely miserable. Bang, bang, bang. Du Xiaoyao's huge red-bone horse monkey body was also on a killing spree. One by one, the experts of the Du royal residence were directly smashed into meat paste, and the spiritual weapons and 3 ordinary talisman weapons were directly swallowed under the dumbfounded gazes of many. Kill. In the Du royal residence, Huaning and the other guards of the Courage God residence were also on a killing spree. With the king's scaled demonic tiger and Du Xiaoqing sweeping through all the experts, Huan and the rest were unobstructed, and there was a bloody massacre. Flattened the Du royal residence. The guards of the Courage God residence were not merciful people, and when they saw the people of the Du royal residence deceiving the Courage God residence, they were enraged and did not hold back. In an instant, the Du royal residence was filled with endless screams, and blood flowed like a river. It was extremely tragic. Du Xiaofu, don't kill anymore. Let's talk nicely. Don't kill me. The second elder was terrified. In the face of absolute death, no one would be afraid, and he was no exception. Although he was old, he definitely did not want to live long enough. Do you know fear now? Do you know that the Stone City's Du family is not to be trifled with? Ha ha. Du Xiaofu laughed, and his laughter sent chills down one's spine. He appeared in front of the second elder, and with a ruthless kick, he kicked the second elder from midair into a huge palace below. Blood splattered everywhere, and the palace collapsed. Miserable screams could be heard from the pile of rubble. Get out here. Du Xiaofu waved his hand, and a suction force gushed out from his palm, and the second elder, who was kicked into the rubble, was directly sucked into his palm. The pitiful second elder was covered in blood, and both his arms were broken. His face was distorted, and he was in extreme pain. His body was also in a sorry state, and many of his old ribs were broken. Enough? All of you stop, stop. Suddenly, an aged voice rang out from the depths of the Du household, following which, several figures appeared in mid-air. The first one was an old man with an aged face, but his body was well-built, and his eyes were like lightning in the dark clouds, causing one's heart to palpitate. High up in the sky, dark clouds were faintly gathering, and the world became dusky. There did not seem to be any aura fluctuations on the old man's body, but for no reason, he was able to affect this part of the world. Behind the old man was a majestic figure. His entire body was wrapped in multicolored light, and extremely terrifying fluctuations rippled around his body. He looked to be in his 50s, and a bright silver snake light was released from his body, causing one to be intimidated. He was the current head of the Du family, the Protector King, Du Qingqing. Behind Du Qingqing, there were also several figures. They were the elites of the younger generation of the Du family, Du Chong, Du Yi, Du Qi, Du Yunxin, and the rest. It's the head of the family and the old head. We have hope. The head of the family is here. Old head of the family, save us. The people of the Du household, who were wailing miserably and terrified, suddenly saw the two figures in midair. It was as if they had seen hope in the midst of despair, as they respectfully bowed and shouted, "It's the Protector King." And the old Protector King. 17 years ago, the old Protector King announced that he would go into seclusion. In the face of such a major event, he has finally come out. The gazes of the surrounding spectators trembled slightly. Facing the old Protector King and the current Protector King, there was a lack of respect and awe in their gazes. After all, today, many people had witnessed the scene of the Du household being ruined on the inside. Today's explosion, the second watch has arrived. Continue to write, ask for fresh flowers, recommendations, and other support. Chapter 481. Following the arrival of the two Protector Kings, a terrifying aura spread throughout the area, causing Phantom and the rest to temporarily stop fighting. The Du family disciples of the Du household also retreated. Roar! The king scaled demonic tiger and Du Xiaoqing's figures swept through the air, arriving behind Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao, tightly surrounding Du Xiaofu and Du Xiaoyao. Especially the king's scaled demonic tiger, its ferocious black tiger body towered over the sky, causing the eyes of the old man in front and Protector King Du Qingqing to flicker uncertainly. However, in comparison, Protector King Du Qingqing was more wary of Du Xiaoqing at this moment. He was well aware of Du Xiaoqing's terrifying strength. Du Xiaofu's gaze also landed on the old man in front. From what the North Vanquishing Prince had told him, Du Xiaofu had seen this old man in the scene 17 years ago. That old man was the Protector King of the Du family. His seemingly calm aura gave off a sense of danger, affecting this part of the world. He was definitely an extremely powerful existence. I didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, you would have already grown up and become so extraordinary. For my sake, let go, that's enough. The old Protector King looked at Du Xiaofu, his old face unperturbed. Do you think I'll let it go just because you say so? That's easy for you to say. Du Xiaofu sneered, exerting more force in his hand. The second elder, who was being squeezed in his palm, screamed in pain, spitting out blood continuously. Old patriarch, save me. For the Du household, for the Du family, kill this bastard. The second elder screamed and begged loudly. His eyes, which were originally filled with despair and fear, were once again filled with hope because of the old patriarch's arrival. Old bastard! Du Xiaofu exerted force once again. Golden light erupted and distorted space, causing the second elder to immediately spit out blood again. His mouth was filled with miserable shrieks as blood dripped from it. Child, let go of second elder. Second elder is already old, and you have killed so many people. Du Palace and Shicheng's Du family are of the same origin. Why bother killing each other? The old protector king sighed. Looking at the blood flowing like a river inside and outside the Du Palace, his eyes were filled with grief. Du Xiaofu looked straight at the old protector king and said, "This old thief is already old. Are you bullying me because I'm young? Du Xiaofu, how dare you be so rude in front of your grandfather?" In the crowd, Du Qi shouted, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. However, he was relying on the fact that both the new and old protector kings were by his side. "If you dare to say it again, I will kill you on the spot. I guarantee that even the two kings of your Du household will not be able to save your little life." Du Xiaofu suddenly glared at Du Qi and shouted loudly. A fierce aura suddenly swept out, scaring Du Qi to the point that he couldn't help but retreat. "Shut up." Protector King Du Qingqing turned his head and shouted at Du Qi. Lightning flashed in his eyes as a pressure spread and a mighty aura surged. With a soft cry, Du Qi, who was still being protected, immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was deathly pale, and he no longer dared to make a sound. "Child, Du Palace was wrong in the past. What conditions do you want? I will agree to it as long as it is within my ability. Don't kill anymore. After all, we are of the same origin." The old protector king looked at Du Xiaofu and said. The expression on his old face became gloomy. "Haha, what a good origin. When my family was hunted down, it was in this Du Palace, right here. Where did your origin go?" A group of old thieves from Du Palace went to Stone City's Du family and hurt my relatives. They disrespected the ancestors of the Du family. Where did your origin go? Just a moment ago, the old bastard in my hands tricked me into entering the Du household and activated the Great Formation to kill me. If not for the fact that I had the means to escape, I would have long been reduced to ashes. Where did your lineage go? Du Xiaofu laughed coldly. His voice was loud and cold as he asked 3 questions in a row, resounding across the sky. Sigh. The old protector let out a long sigh, as if he was speechless. "You have nothing to say? Then let me say it." Du Xiaofu looked at the old protector king, and then loudly said, "Invite second uncle, Qi." Hearing this, Du Zhixiong looked at the sky in front of him. Then, profound energy surged from the soles of his feet. His figure swept across the sky and arrived beside Du Xiaofu. With the resources that Du Xiaoman brought back last time, he had finally broken through to the initial level of the pulse spirit stage. Du Xiaofu loudly asked Du Zhixiong, "Second uncle, as a disciple of the Du family, what should we do if we betray the family and betray the family?" Under the pressure of the old Protector King and Protector King Du Qingqing, Du Zhixiong was affected. However, at this time, he also gathered his courage and loudly said, "As a disciple of the Du family, if we betray the family and betray the family and betray the family, we will expel them from the Du family and destroy their cultivation. In severe cases, we will kill them to prevent them from harming others." A group of old thieves from the Du royal residence went to the Stone City Du family, violated the main family, disrespected the ancestors of the Du family, stole the ancestors' belongings, and killed each other. What should we do? Du Xiaofu loudly asked again. Du Zhixiong said, violated the main family, disrespected the ancestors of the Du family, stole the ancestors' belongings, and killed each other. The order of the ancestors is to kill them on the spot. All of you heard it clearly. Du Xiaofu looked at the old Protector King and said, "Hand over all the people who violated the Stone City's ancestral land." Otherwise, I will start a massacre today. I guarantee that you will not be able to protect the Du royal residence." As the sound of Du Xiaofu's voice faded, everyone's hearts trembled. Facing the old patriarch of the Du household, the previous generation's protector, Du Xiaofu could still be so awe-inspiring, saying that even the old patriarch would not be able to protect the Du household. How tyrannical was this? It seems like the courage god king Du Xiaofu wants to flatten the Du royal residence today. Someone in the crowd exclaimed in shock. This was the courage god king expressing his anger. The Du royal residence had thoroughly infuriated the courage god king, which was why the courage god king was so relentless. No matter what, this was the most shocking event in the imperial capital since the founding of the Stone Dragon Empire. The old protector king looked at Du Xiaofu and sighed. "Why don't you let me deal with the people you want? I won't let them off easily. I will also return the ancestral shrine's stone coffin to you. How about it? Do you think I will trust the Du royal residence again?" As soon as Du Xiaofu's voice fell, he exerted force in his palm. Immediately, a golden talisman burst out from his palm. Ah! The second elder let out a miserable howl once again. His internal organs were about to be shattered. He was in incomparable pain and was in extremely miserable state. "No, let go of him!" The old protector king seemed to have sensed something and immediately shouted, "Du Xiaofu, stop killing." The protector king, Du Qingqing, shouted as his expression changed. Lightning erupted from his body, and he immediately pounced towards Du Xiaofu. "Humph!" Du Xiaoqing snorted as the green talisman runes on her palm erupted. It was as though a green ocean had drowned the sky. With a surge of energy, she slapped her palm towards the protector king, Du Qingqing. Roar, roar! As Du Xiaoqing made her move, the terrifying aura caused a large number of demonic beasts to groan. All the human meridian spirits couldn't withstand the terrifying aura, and their meridian spirits trembled as though they were about to explode. The Protector King's expression changed as he waved his hand. A lightning fist immediately collided with Du Xiaoqing's palm. Rumble. Suddenly, the collision caused a large area of space to explode. The energy swept across the sky, and in the Du royal residence, a large area of the courtyard exploded. The ground cracked continuously as though it was about to be destroyed. Chi-la-la, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the Protector King's body was directly pushed back. Du Xiaoqing's delicate body only swayed slightly as she took a step back. "Child, calm down first. After all, we are of the same origin. Let's talk things over." At the same time, the Protector King's figure had already appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. In his palm, there were bright lightning runes surging, as though it was connected to the dark clouds behind him. With a terrifying energy fluctuation, it directly enveloped Du Xiaofu. At this moment, Du Xiaofu held his sword in one hand, and the second elder of the Du royal residence in the other. His eyes were filled with coldness, but there wasn't the slightest bit of worry. "Sigh, don't tell me you have really become senile." Suddenly, a sigh resounded. An icy aura spread out, and a thin figure appeared in the sky. As this thin figure appeared, the thin old body waved his hand. Icy runes flew out, covering the sky with frost. It was as though this part of the world had suddenly fallen into winter. The terrifying aura immediately collided with the Protector King's palm. Walala! The lightning aura and icy aura collided, but there wasn't much of a sonic boom. After the collision, the terrifying energy also didn't spread far away. Instead, it was directly annihilated, turning into nothingness. Clearly, the cultivation level of these two people wasn't much different. Their comprehension was even more superb. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to reach this step. The thin old man's figure slightly retreated. His figure was skinny, and his wrinkled face was dark. He was the North Vanquishing Prince, Xiatiana. "Haha, it really is the Du royal residence." Du Xiaofu sneered. With a wave of his hand, a cracking sound suddenly resounded from his palm, following which, a golden light seeped out from the second elder's body. The energy in his body rioted, and finally, his body exploded in the air like a bomb. Bang, bang, bang. With a low muffled sound, the second elder of the Du royal residence, who was known as the #1 person below the Martial King level, directly exploded in Du Xiaofu's palm. In front of the Protector King, Du Xiaofu killed the second elder of the Du royal residence. He didn't hold back, and his killing intent was swift and fierce.